I can record now.
Yes, apparently. Okie doke.
Just didn't want it forgotten.
Yeah, I think that he won't let you do it until you admit people. Is that what?
No, I just
okay.
stopped the recording while I'm waiting to open the meeting.
Got it. Okay. Okay, welcome everyone to Dover, Massachusetts Conservation Commission meeting for November 8th, 2023. Lori, if you can go ahead and read the advisement there, the governor's prose, please.
Following guidance issued by the governor regarding the open meeting law, this public meeting will be held remotely. Individuals wishing to participate may do so using Zoom video conferencing technology. Join the meeting by video conferencing using a computer or tablet. You may use the link listed on the agenda, which is posted on the Dover website. You may also call the phone number and enter the ID and passcode, and this meeting is being recorded.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So for the first item on tonight's agenda, we have a RDA for 129 Dedham Street, utility trenching to upgrade the electrical in the existing buildings. And Janet, can you, you had some notes. Can you address that, please?
Yeah, this is really straightforward. So again, it's putting in new utility lines. My review of the site plan, I just asked the question if there was an option to bring the lines outside of the 50-foot, since it looks like the trenching's taken the shortest path. And so that was my primary question. And then also we usually do require orange construction fencing, but I know Mark Cooperman's here and he can address some of those issues.
Okay. Then I think, Mark, do you need your screen shared?
Yes, please. Good evening, everyone.
Okay.
John, if you would let me share, I'll pull up the plan for starters.
It's not up to me. It's depending on how Lori's feeling.
Lori, please. Let me get, okay. Share screen. Here we go. How about that? Is that a good size for everyone?
I think so. Let's start with that and see if we need to go in. I think it is when not being color coded, so it's not clear where exactly everything is. So if you can just outline where major landmarks are, that would be helpful.
Sure thing. So you do not see the red, John?
Oh no, we see the red, but
you do. Great. Okay.
It's not clear. I assume Dedham Street is down at the bottom of that.
Dedham Street, yeah. So this zoomed view, if I should be able to change pages here. Here we go.
There you go.
So starting at the block, what we call the block garage barn, the cement barns there. Okay. Starts
actually
there.
that's a very good if you move back to that can just familiarize everyone with the street where the buildings
Dedham
are,
Street.
where you're proposing to go from there.
And you do see my cursor, correct?
Yep, we do.
Great. So Dedham Street down here. The service starting here at the block garage, which you'll see in a minute, actually right here at that next plan. And then this is the area that is zoomed in much better in the next plan. It really involves the work.
Before you do that, just on this one, because it's less cluttered than the Zoom plan.
Yes, of course.
The wetland resources that Janet was referring to.
Yeah.
Can you show them on this plan?
Yep. Let me notice. Let's see here. How's that?
Yeah, that's good. Yep.
Good, right there. Okay. Yeah. So good idea. Let's do it on this one first. So we're starting here. Here's our origination point for the upgraded electrical service at the block barn. I've sent some supplemental material which shows that essentially the existing service runs in a very similar fashion. This first, in order to get to the studio over here, okay, one of the hubs, in order to get to the studio, we've come right here back to the roadway, kept most of that utility work within the roadway, tied into the studio. This is the buffer for the small farm pond. Okay, this area in here is all paddock or lawn, existing paddock or lawn. That service junctions off from there to both the generator and the pump house, respectively. Okay.
Yeah.
That then continues in a straight line up to outside the resource buffers up to the existing building up top at the home.
And that line there, is that the way it's currently fed as well, or?
Some of it, not all of it. I can pull that up. I know I've emailed that to Janet and Lori in the last day or two. We just received it from the contractor. I can pull up. We had the contractors had Bloodhound do all the existing utilities location, and so we have some of the known electrical. A lot of it overlaps, and then some of this is slightly different.
Okay. And can I just, while this is up, just because it's easier to see.
Yeah.
Janet, is your major concern this straight line going right near the pond there? Is that what your question was?
Well, yes, with our performance standard setbacks, we require, if there's no alternative, then that's allowed. So that's what I was just setting up here. Just to determine, is there an alternative?
And do folks get credit if something is already existing in that particular location? I don't,
That was for Janet, right, John?
Yeah. Janet, and it was, if they're basically replacing what's already in that location, is there any abeyance of those concerns, or
again, if there is no alternative, so I hadn't been given when I wrote my report, I hadn't been given the existing line location.
I see.
But regardless, if there is a less impactful alternative, then that's what the regulations would require. So that it's just an inquiry: is there a less? Can it be pulled away? Not just, it's going where it already had been, but is there something that might have less impact?
Okay.
That, and if I could add to that, John, I think I see what Janet's point is with regard to the 2D space and time of the buffer. That being said, correct. So the alternative would be to go in another direction, which would result in a lot more disturbance and going through a lot more buffer overall. If you went to the right, for example, and then came back, which is a lot more disturbance overall, is slightly impractical from a construction perspective, and a utility perspective. And that's right. And while I agree with Janet's sort of direction towards an alternative, I think one of the other things that is considered in this type of situation is that, yes, in the section of buffer that we're actually crossing through here, the buffer isn't necessarily meeting the interests of the act, and that it's existing developed area, so to speak. And so that was why the current, following most of the current path and even shortening some of it with the new, was considered in this direction, such that given the location of the hubs, as I mentioned, I think in my response to Janet's comments, given the location of the hubs we're trying to reach, there, for all intents and purposes, seems to be no practical alternative. And to your point, I wonder, is there some way, I think what you were getting at, is there some way this is quote unquote grandfathered, to make it simple?
There's that. I think the idea of that you mentioned in terms of, that it's going through disturbed paddock space and the like. So the small rectangle to the left is the generator. Is that correct?
One is the generator and one is the pump, and I may have them.
I see. And so those aren't going anywhere. So they need to get fed regardless.
They need to get fed regardless. Correct. And you see, when we go to the next sheet, you'll see them better.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. So I'll go to that next sheet. Let me zoom out again for us here. Just a second. How's that scale and view for everyone?
Pretty good.
Good. Okay, so here's
on my screen.
Yeah, I was correct. This is generator on the left and pump house on the right, and they're existing in studio over here. So there's just a closer view of that, along with some, as I, in my discussion with Janet, I said that, we understand. So right out of the gate, we're proposing, construction and ENS controls. And we have all that here for the trench work. We proposed a timeline based on the explanation given to me by our contractor, Kevin Bohan. You'll see the stockpile area shown, obviously away from the resource.
And are you going 18 to 24 inches down typically?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
So not significant waste or stockpiling necessary.
No, exactly. And
Okay.
and the idea is that obviously with these, as the contractors can get inspections from the electrical inspector, they can start to zip back sections of the trench. So coming out of the block barn here, coming up the mains over here to the studio, to the generator, over here to the pump, and then going up towards the dwelling.
And have you outlined paddock space to give us a representation of what's the existing condition is there?
So you'll see paddock, you'll see the paddock fencing.
Oh, okay, right there.
Here.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, and then grass area here.
Okay, and then you start going up the hill.
The hill, yeah, and the hill is like,
yes.
the hill is sort of managed, it's a managed shrub and woodland. So it's mowed, like the lower part is historically been mowed. They'll be avoiding trees as they go through.
So the potential of as you come up from the concrete, the block buildings there, you're going in a straight line pretty much up to the house.
Yes.
And if you were to take that first left, and then where it feeds up to the generator there.
Yes.
And if you were to move your main portion over to there and then go up to the house, running closer by the generator, which would take you out of that 50 and 70 foot for the most part. Is that functionally doable? Does that introduce more handholds or curves or anything like that? Or
I'll defer to Kevin. Kevin, are you with us here? Kevin and Rob, are you here with us?
Yep.
Hey, Rob. Good evening. So I'm thinking Rob, you can you lay this out with Kevin. Rob Carlerzon, our project engineer. I think if you look over here, John, one of the issues might be the grade starts to get a little steeper here.
Got it.
And this I'm guessing in this area right in here, this might be an actual challenge to even get equipment on it.
Right. So well, there's a valid potential for your alternatives analysis. But go ahead, Rob.
Yep. So just for the record, I'm Rob Carlerzon, Grady Consulting. So the main reason we wanted to keep it this straight, on this plan, it doesn't necessarily scale the way it is in reality, in terms of there's some very large trees that are located sort of between the 70-foot buffer and the 100-foot buffer, kind of to the right of the that's the generator.
Yeah.
So our thought was we wanted to stay well clear of the roots of these larger trees. Obviously, so we actually thought this was the least detrimental, and basically we didn't want to damage any root systems of any trees.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Is there an existing conduit there already at any portion of that?
So this, based on what the information that I received from the contractor, we do show the existing electric lines that are known to the best of our knowledge. We do have some contractor to verify locations. This is an old farm, so that there's lines kind of going all different directions.
Surprise.
Surprise. Yes.
So we did our best to try to note where all known existing lines are. We have a line from the existing generator over to the pump room, a line from the generator over to I think we have an electrical service box over to the left towards the existing studio, and from that box up towards the house. again, that's just kind of the best of our knowledge, and that there's sort
Okay,
of.
no, I think the question I had was whether we're gonna reuse existing conduit. That's assuming that there actually is conduit. I wouldn't be surprised if there's direct burial
Right.
there as well. So, did you know it? Have you discovered any conduit there? And, if so, is it reusable or?
Yep. So as far as I know, no.
Okay.
That's just based on talking with the client, basically the farm managers and the contractor.
Okay. Janet, given those mitigating circumstances that they directed us to, anything else any other concerns you have?
No, I think Mark's supplemental information that we got yesterday that addresses my concerns.
Mhm.
And also he requested no requirement for orange construction fencing just because it's a short-term project. So I think that's possible.
Okay. I think that's appropriate as well. It's, straight line, not very deep, and closed up while they proceed, as he alluded to with inspections. Commissioners, any questions? No, Kadook. Then Jen, is there any reason not to vote on this?
No, and
Okay.
I do not have any special conditions as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So given that, I will entertain a motion to close the hearing. Anybody? And Mark, you can take this screen down.
Amy, you want to do it?
Oh, so we don't have Tim. I was waiting for
Right,
Tim.
that's why I was-
I know. Yeah, but
That's why
thank
I'm
God we have.
Amy.
Move to
we have
close
a-
the hearing.
Second,
Thank you. All in favor? Sarah,
aye.
Anna,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
and myself as an aye. So, and then entertain a motion to issue a negative determination and in permission to proceed.
Second.
Well,
Oh, so do you need, I mean, you made the
no, I
motion.
think for this is benign enough. I think that's fine. So all in favor? Amy,
Aye.
Anna,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, so just communicate with Janet for your start, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, John. Thank you, Commission.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Night.
See you guys in a few weeks. Good night.
Okey-doke. Okay, next I see 26 Miller Hill Road. Has that received a DEP number?
I don't believe so.
Okey-doke.
Checked earlier
Uh,
today. I didn't see anything.
Okay, and Jen, did you have a chance to review this?
Yes.
So is it worth like a relatively small scale situation? Is this something you think we could review and vote on at the next meeting, or what's
Yes.
okay?
Yeah, I do have a couple questions, but I thought maybe Scott Goddard, I think, is presenting this, so maybe he can present the proposal. There was some confusion on I had confusion. One of the site plans said proposed driveway, but I know there's an existing driveway there, so maybe that was a carryover from an old plan. I don't know. And then I did have some other questions, but maybe Scott would want to present this and then we can go over any issues.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is Scott Goddard. I have Sophie from my office who's going to present initially, but I'll be on the call if questions arise as well. So Sophie, if you're there, if you can turn off your mic and camera and you can chime in.
Thank you, Scott.
We see her visage, and let's go for it. Thanks, Sophie.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. As Scott said, my name is Sophie Shapiro, and I'm a wetland scientist with Goddard Consulting. I will be covering the regulatory analysis portion of the presentation. May I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Right.
You may want to just give us an overview and then you can zoom in afterwards.
Yes, sounds good. So here is a graphic highlighting the proposed alterations and the regulated areas on site. The proposed alterations are highlighted in blue. Here you can see the proposed green porch and terrace, and the proposed driveway addition is in this hatched blue over here. Here you can see the boundary of the on-site BBW and associated buffer zones in green. Here is the 50-foot disturbance setback, the 70-foot structure setback, the 100-foot buffer zone under the Wetlands Protection Act, and the 150-foot buffer zone. And over here, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Continue.
And then over here, you can see the mean annual high water line in red. And here is the 100-foot riverfront area and the 200-foot riverfront area.
Okay. And just to let you know for future reference, we adhere to a 100-foot buffer, not a 150-foot buffer.
Okay.
So that that was not approved at town meeting. So we'll be we're trying to get tech to change the website for that.
Okay, good to know. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
So the proposed screen porch is within the 100-foot buffer zone, but there are no proposed alterations within the 70-foot no structure setback, which is over here.
Okay.
And then the existing alterations over here, this shed, are located approximately 55 feet from the nearest wetland flag at the closest point, while the proposed alterations are located approximately 80 feet from the nearest wetland flag at the closest point. So therefore, the alterations are up gradient from the current alterations. And with the exception of this portion highlighted in the hatched blue here, the entirety of the driveway is existing already. So all of the driveway that's within riverfront area is preceding this project.
Okay. And the proposed driveway in blue to the right is outside of all buffers?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it's this hatched area here and everything else is already there.
Okay, so that what we have jurisdictional for us is really just the screen porch?
Yes, definitely. If the 150-foot buffer zone is not active, then yes, it would just be the sun or the screen porch and then the sunroom to be raised.
Okay. Janet, you had some questions relative to this?
Yes, so that's been clarified. Thank you. On the NOI application form, it indicates that a portion of the site is subject to a wetlands restriction order under the Inland Wetlands Restriction Act. And I think it would be good to get a copy of that wetlands restriction order just to make sure that all this work is in full compliance with that order. This was these wetland restriction designations were based on flyovers when the Wetlands Act first went into effect. They're kind of dinosaurs, but they do pop up every now and then, and they are still in effect. So I'm wondering if you have a copy of that order and if you can forward that to us.
We are in the process of obtaining those records and we will submit them to the commission as soon as feasible with our supplemental information package. And any restriction is in respect to the wetlands themselves and not the buffer zone. So the information is valuable, but is not going to be impacted by the proposed screen porch.
And if I can just interject as well, these are basically lists and lists of data when the first Wetlands Protection Act came out. For example, 100% of Donnelly Drive is all covered by this. It basically outlines every wetland in the Commonwealth and basically is saying things within those denominated wetlands will most likely come under jurisdiction for the new conservation commissions that came into being at that point. So I actually, and Janet, I'm open to discussion there. I don't see a need for that. Like you said, that they're kind of a dinosaur, and with the delineations that people are doing and requiring at this point, trying to dig up whatever documentation may have come out 50 years ago. I'm not sure that's material to this. Do you have a major concern if we forego that? You've seen these lists. Every single portion, everything that comes before us is actually notated in a list somewhere in that act from 50 or 60 years ago. And this would be the first time that we've required anybody to produce, a copy of the old document.
So a lot of things are not actually in these restrictions, which is why DEP still has it on their form. And if I don't recall ever seeing any yeses in the last several years on this. It's just a good practice to have a copy.
So here's what I'd like to do with this. Why don't we'll go forward with that. If you're already working on it, Sophie, let's go ahead and do it. But I'd like to know at the next meeting how much time it took you to find this. Because in my review of things, looking at other places in town when I've built and consulted, a good portion of the town is enumerated in these things. They're just pages of addresses and things of that nature. It's an interesting point that we haven't seen it, but I think if we went back and reviewed most of the NOIs for the last 5 years, many of them would be have been enumerated under that. So
well, if I could maybe jump in, John, for one quick second.
Yeah,
Scott again. So I guess I would restate the request of the commission to not have to produce this document. I've been working in Dover for 30 years and have done somewhere close to 400 projects in town in various capacities. And so
you're responsible for all that growth.
Well, so my experience tells me with respect to these wetland restriction areas is that they're really core wetlands themselves that are marked. So not even the fringes of BVW per se, but really wet areas internal to BVW. So I can't think of a situation ever, and this is true in the surrounding towns, Dedham and Needham, that also have similar types of restrictions, that these outer buffer zone projects would not trip within those restriction boundaries, and certainly not, out where we're talking about a house structure being, nearly 100 feet away from a wetland boundary perimeter that wouldn't even be depicted on those maps, and those don't have buffer zones per se. So I think it's an unneeded exercise in this case that will take a fair bit of time to do. So that would be my request, if we could forego that.
So Scott, would my description of these in terms of the pages of things that are enumerated, in the original Wetlands Act, is that correct in your experience? Is that the way these things are noticed? They're neighborhood after neighborhood of wetland areas.
There in part, yes. There are some lingering maps floating around that are difficult to uncover. If the Dover Conservation, if Lori at the office doesn't have a copy of these maps, then that'd be the easiest source. If the Concom kept a full set of the maps on record that people could reference, but they are not easy for the average person to stumble across.
And of those things, relative to Janet's concern, what are they? What do they outline as concerns, or what is it that a delineation such as you provided here? What is something that the state noticed there that would supersede or bring anything else to our attention concerning that? Is there anything?
Well, there would be no additional jurisdictional review or some standard that you're looking at. I mean, this was intended back in the 70s to consider areas that were where work was proposed inside of a wetland. It was kind of like pre-Wetland Protection Act stuff. So the level of protection that we give to wetlands, it far exceeds anything that was ever contemplated back then. They just looked at aerial photographs, and deep water areas in certain towns were identified by aerial photographs as wetlands. There was no such thing as a buffer zone or anything like that at that point in time. So even if this adjacent wetland satisfied was found to be a in a wetland or, restriction order, then it wouldn't change this project or ask for it wouldn't result in asking for a different action by this board or anything like that.
Mhm.
So,
So you're saying that basically of the 400 things that you've done in Dover, was it an oversight to not check that box, or?
no, because you're really only supposed to check the box if you're working within the zones.
Mhm.
So if on this case, the application checked yes, then that's probably the mistake on my part is checking that box off. So,
Okay.
Really where this, if I was advising the commission, and I'm not taking the role of Janet or Paul or anything like that, but if projects that proposed direct wetland impacts, this becomes a relevant question to ask.
Okay, so I guess one of the things is the box did get checked, whether an error or not.
Yeah.
So it would make sense, since we're going to have to continue this anyway, to just get that clarified, whether it was appropriate to have it been checked.
We'll uncheck the box.
Well, for now you have to go and now you have to go and prove that it's worth unchecking. So we'll just need some clarification on it.
Sure.
And I don't disagree with your description of it, but I think since we have something and DEP has something that has that checked off, they may be just as curious. So,
John, Janet has her hand raised.
oh, there you go, Janet.
Not to belabor the point, but the box says, is any portion of the site subject to a wetlands restriction order under the Inland Wetlands Restriction Act? So it's not, are you doing any work in a wetland? So I think this has been left on the form just to trigger a potential review. I agree, certainly there's no issue here, because how far you are away from the wetland. I just wanted to clarify, and I have not seen, I can't remember the last time in 5 years that I saw the box checked. So
my sense is that it's one of just benign willful neglect, because it doesn't really, it's no longer applicable. But since it was, let's find out a little bit more information about it. We don't have to make that decision tonight. And but DEP may refer to it, since this gets sent into them. So let's just be prepared for it. And then we'll have addressed it, and we'll be able to address it, going forward as well. So let's just get a little bit more information on how this works. My sense is, just as I outlined, it's almost an anachronism on the form, but let's not assume that. Let's find out for sure. Okay. Let's see. Are there any other questions, Janet, you have relative to this project, to our bylaws and current DEP regulations?
yes, so my comment number 3, no erosion or sedimentation control has been shown on the site plan. It was referenced in the narrative, but I couldn't find any erosion control on the site plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
Sorry, you're correct. There's not erosion control currently on the stamped plan, but we will be submitting an updated stamped plan with our supplemental information package that includes an erosion control barrier, uniform coloring throughout the plan, and the location of the required signage, permanent bounds, and stockpiling and storage locations as discussed at the upcoming site walk.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. There was also the tanks there. I can't tell if that's drainage or yes, those existing.
Yes, those are existing. That was just a simple technology error. They were not supposed to be that color, so that was a mistake that will be corrected on the updated plan.
Mm-hmm. So they're not proposed.
No, they're existing.
Okay, I see. That's why. Okay, then we'll change that. Any other questions, Janet?
The last was I will meet you on site, and we'll pick the locations for the signage and permanent bounds. And then number 9, just confirming that a certificate of compliance was issued for the original project. Is that correct?
We are also in the process of obtaining those records, and we'll submit them to the commission as soon as feasible with our supplemental information package.
Okay, great.
Is this are these new buyers?
I'm not certain, actually.
Okay, no, I'm just wondering if that, we didn't hear anything about a sale with something existing, so, but that doesn't mean it didn't exist.
I can speak to that. Hi, my name's Guy Grassi and I'm the architect for the project.
Hi, Guy.
Hi, the Choi's that own the property currently bought it about a year ago.
Got it.
And they're just doing a bunch of restoration work to the house and alter some minor interior alterations.
Okay, thanks. So we have time. So is there any other questions, Janet, or on the part of commissioners before we continue this to our next meeting?
So in light of the fact that the property has changed hands, the order of conditions does require, well, if there is a COC, a continuing condition would have been that the deed needed to reference our standard language with regard to the wetland delineation. So
depending on when it was issued. Yeah.
Right, but that goes back at least 10 years. I don't think this home is 10 years old or more. It could be, but
No, it is.
Yeah.
it is. Okay.
How old do you think, Guy?
I think it was built in the late 90s.
Okay, so it may not have that requirement, but it'll be one. As you look at as you do the research to see if a COC has been granted, you should be able to find the order of conditions and see whether it refers to a covenant. And then it's just a paragraph that would be inserted in order to close out the previous COC. But if it's not on that order of conditions, then it would then be moved up to this order of conditions when it's granted. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, then any reason not to continue this from anyone? Okay, then let's go ahead and continue to our next meeting. And Scott or et al., could somebody send a email to Lori requesting that formally, please? Thanks.
Thank you.
Let's me find. Okay, so next we have, let's see, is 146 Claybrook, is that in front of us or not? I know we had a couple of cancellations. Janet?
I think I saw Mark Arnold here, but I think the sense was that was going to be continued.
Yes, this is Scott. We did request a continuation on that.
Okay, I was just looking for a clarification. Okay, thanks. Then we have 15 Wilsondale. We have a continuation on that. The parties are communicating, and they'll be coming back to us on that. And then that's the turnouts on the shared driveway there, or driveway / road. And then 17 Old Farm Road. Is that up or is that being continued, Scott?
So we also requested a continuation of that one, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see, then are you still on here for anything?
So yes, the Saddle Ridge Road.
Oh, the discussion as we get to discussion later on. Okay. Okay, then we have a COC request for 24 Pine Street. And I believe, Janet, you said you found the requirement from one of those covenants that's from 2007 or something, like 2010 or whatever. Can you update us on that, please?
Yes, so I've been to the site. This was a very straightforward project, but there was a special condition requiring a deed covenant. The property has sold hands, has transferred. I did send the attorney, or I sent the previous owner the deed language. All of this came about just late last week, so I had to kind of shuffle a little bit. But I'd recommend deferring this until we get the deed restriction and proof of recording. Okay,
then so moved. Let's see, 60 Claybrook Road. Is that on for tonight?
I believe so. So this is a certificate of compliance request. It's a fairly recent one. Signage and bounds were required. Those were not put in, even though the certification letter said everything was done in compliance. So I will need to schedule a site meeting with the owner or his representative to choose the location for the bounds and sign it.
Okay, and have you communicated with them at this
Just
point?
do my regulatory review report. Yeah, they're on
Okay.
notice. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, then, Four Haven Terrace. Is that up tonight, or what's our, I know we had so many continuances, so is that still up in front of us?
Yes, that is in front of
Okay.
us. And I think
Oh.
we will be able to wrap that up tonight.
Okay,
So as you'll recall, we've had several conversations about replication, restoration out there. Paul did a third-party review. He submitted his report. And then the last piece was just to outline the special conditions for the amended order of conditions. I did draft those. I ran those by Paul. So there are a couple just small changes in the special conditions that I sent out with my report. The first one was a date, so that all new plantings need to be in by the end of spring 2024. Let's see what, I don't think there were any other really substantive comments by Paul. They were just some small tweaks. Yeah.
so
And-
as I see in your regulatory report, it's saying spring of 2023. So that's just a is that a typo?
Right.
Okay,
Right. So
so
it's
it'll be moved.
2024. Yeah.
Okay. And so let's see, I'm looking at adding things. And at this point, has the homeowner proceeded to already start planting, do you know?
No, they would need this order approved.
Mhm.
And I also requested, this is going back about a month ago, we do need the deed language submitted and proof of recording, and we have not received that yet. So I don't know what the issue is there.
Let's see, and is Debbie, are you're representing them tonight?
Kind of listening in. So the deed language was part of the COC. So, we did talk about that before. I don't know if you've changed and made that a requirement now, but it was part of the order for the COC.
Okay, so you're saying that it wouldn't be required up until prior to requesting the COC.
Right,
is that-
according to your order.
Yeah.
So
And you did give him permission to do the planting, and the planting is complete.
That's what I thought. There had been some discussion on that. I saw emails.
Yeah, he got the plantings and they've all been installed. He's already started the invasive removal. So per you're okay.
I don't recall that, but
Yeah, I'm a little curious. I'm pleased that that he wanted to get done. I just didn't, we didn't quite formally close this out from what I recall. Can you update us?
He
or
asked your
remind us?
permission, that the last meeting that he attended, he wanted to get the plantings in, while the weather was still good, and asked you if he could start that work, and you did say yes. So,
Okay. Well, we're behind in our minutes, so we can't refer them right at the moment. But if they're just confirming what we're basically to confirm tonight, we'll move forward on that. Let's see, is there anything else, Janet, that these
Yes.
are all pretty common? Go ahead.
So the reason I put the deed language in and that it should be done now is that in the original order of conditions was issued to Pat Corrigan. So when the land got transferred, at that point, maybe 4 years ago, there should have been a new deed. So that's why I'm requesting that now. not waiting another 2 years until we close this out because of the plantings. So that would follow the requirements of the order of condition at the time of transfer. We would
So
need,
the original to Corrigan was required that basically upon any deed in the future, that wording was supposed to be involved. Is that right?
that's right.
And so that didn't that deed went through Corrigan, then to Pelletier, I believe, and then to the current owner. So it should have. So yeah, I think Deb, if you can communicate that, we'll need to have that put in place. There's a lot of stuff happening simultaneously, but let's go ahead and do that. Given all that, yeah.
I don't recall, I think the agreement was that he could purchase the plantings because we approved the planting plan. But I don't recall that they could go ahead with installation, but anyways, it appears that it's been done. I have some special conditions here. There are bounds, but they were flush with the ground, and I believe they indicated those would be installed correctly. And then I'm also proposing signage, our 2 signages, that those be required. And then with regard to 9 special conditions with regard to restoration, one was that we were supposed to be given notice before any restoration planting went into effect. And then we also require an initial monitoring report 2 weeks after the plantings.
Okay.
So we'll need that soon.
Okay. So you're understanding that, Debbie?
I am. I will let DeWald know.
Yeah, if we just get a letter out. I thought there was an email floating about. I don't know if it came direct from DeWald, if it came from you, but I thought there was an email that confirmed that this work had been done. Am I making something up, or did you send anything out like that?
I didn't send it out, no.
Okay.
But I do remember the conversation at the meeting, and he did ask me follow-up questions as far as when he was purchasing the plantings and also the invasive removal. So
okay, which is currently in process.
I know
Invasive.
the plantings are in, and there may have been some initial invasive removal.
Okay, and have you been supervising any of that?
I have not been hired to do that, no.
Okay.
So that is one of our requirements, that we have a wetland professional supervise the invasive work and also the plantings.
So is that a new requirement that you've put in there, Janet? I wasn't familiar with whether we'd required that prior to that.
Standard restoration requirement.
I'm sorry?
That's one of our standard restoration requirements.
Okay. Is to have a wetland scientist review that. Okay. And is that in our regulations, or is it a policy? I'm just curious.
It's a special condition based on protection of the values and interests under the Act.
And we've used it for several years now?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, generally, we haven't had that much restoration in front of us, so I think that may be part of what.
It wouldn't be for really small scale. Like later tonight, we're going to approve a restoration plan at 3 Tubrek Drive, which is for a really small area. So that it doesn't apply to that, but this is a fairly major new planting plan.
Okay. So Deb, are you still working for DeWald at this point in terms of closing this up, or
no, not currently.
Okay.
I'm
then
happy to contact him.
Well, please do, and I think Lori will get something out as well. So my question is, this is, regardless of the history, this is relatively standard at this point now. Is this something, Janet, that we can vote on?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and vote on it. I would like to have the commission also vote on a deadline for submittal of the deed. Covenant or confirmatory deed, whatever form they want to put it in.
Well,
but
it seems to me, how about we vote on it, but they will not get the hard copy until we receive proof of recording of that. Does that make sense?
Well, they've already done the work, so I'm not sure that's much leverage, but I would give them a deadline.
Fine.
for-
Okay. So my assumption on this would be a deadline of 30 days from now. Does that any commissioners have any concerns, questions about that? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to grant this amendment as outlined in the agent special report, and with the requirement that the covenant wording be recorded within 30 days. Anybody want to? Yes.
And then, it's my recommended special conditions with slight revisions from Paul that were received today, and I'll get those to Lori.
Before we do that, can you give us a rundown of roughly what those slight?
So
those are?
yeah, I did that. So it was just the 2 date changes for the meetings. And then in one place it says plantings and he added indigenous. And then he recommended, instead of just 1 week after the first monitoring report, instead of 1 week, it's 2 weeks.
Okay, which would come up very quickly because they've already been planted, in essence. Okay, then given those added to what I just mentioned, does anybody so move?
So move.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Amy?
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay, so we're just Lori, if you could just put a tickler in your calendar so that we get DeWalt to stay on top of these, the paperwork aspects there, please. Because it's looking like Debbie may not be the person to contact. So I'd like to get that clarified. Okay, thank you. Great. Thanks, Debbie. Okay, moving on. So let's see, that's on that. Let me just take a look. Excuse me, because I didn't print out the agenda due to lack of toner, apparently. So there's Forehaven Terrace. And then what I'd like to do is our discussion relative to land management and agent, I'd like to move that behind other things so that what I see following Janet's report would next up would be 29 Saddle Ridge Road in terms of the enforcement order response. Janet, have you had a chance to review that?
Yes, so just putting this into context, going back to August, when we got a call of concern of work near a small pond. John and I both did a site visit. We issued an enforcement order to have the wetland resource area delineated. We got a response back from Artie and Debbie Anderson that based on the Wetland Protection Act, it was not a jurisdictional resource area, but they didn't look at the bylaw. So the bylaw says if it's a 1/3 acre volume, a 1/6 acre volume, under the bylaw, it qualifies as isolated land subject to flooding.
So that's a 6 acre foot, is that right?
I'm sorry.
That's a 1/6 acre foot.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. And so they came back and they showed, so it's a little tricky, and I'm recommending a peer review on this. It's tricky because the entire bank around this pond, which probably was man-made, but it could also have been a natural depression that got expanded, but it was completely disturbed. All vegetation was gone. So it's very hard to say what is in fact the contours and the limit of the depression. But Cheney Engineering, a professional engineer, indicated that the depression volume was 7,998. A 6th acre foot volume is 7,260. So by that calculation, it did meet the definition. The property owner then hired Goddard to do basically a second review. And our regulations do require that to establish the boundary, calculations should be performed by a registered professional engineer or other person who's qualified as deemed acceptable by the commission. So their numbers, they use some kind of a software system called TOPS Takeoff Professionals with lots of numbers. And they're saying that, in fact, based on their numbers, it's not jurisdictional. So we have a conflict here. I'm not a professional engineer, so I don't feel comfortable. But you know, it's
who shared this screen here?
Artie.
So Artie, you're working in as in addition to Goddard Consulting, is that right?
So if I may speak real quick, we did the survey on the ground as far as the size of this pond.
Yeah.
Now, the owner believed that this was not jurisdictional, so we tried to minimize the amount of work that we did on site. However, for clarity purposes, we put beam poles on the ground where we found the edge of water to be. And on our calculations, we are showing that the existing water volume, which is contour number 219, is 4,106 cubic feet. Now, if you use the criteria that is 1/4 of an acre, the volume required is 10,890 cubic feet.
Right.
So
under our bylaw, let's just jump right over that.
So under your bylaw is 7,260 cubic feet. So from 4,000 to 7,000 is a big difference. We're not even close.
And when you're saying existing water volume, that's what time of the year?
That's what it's written on the plan. It says on 8/20/21/2023, the water elevation is 219.0. So we are saying elevation 219, where the water is now, the volume is 4,106 cubic feet.
And in April or May, when you have potential increased volume, how do you address that?
And we have not addressed that. We did not undertake that exercise because we didn't have the time and the speed at which the owner needed this. It's a big study to be done. That's why Goddard Consulting looked into this, and they even went further and they modeled this hole using the other company, and they did the calculations using every 1/8 of an inch or every 1/2 foot. They did the calculations. So no matter if you use our calculations of 4,106 cubic feet of water, or if you use their calculations, 3,800 and something cubic feet of water, no matter how you slice it, we're not even close to the 7,000 cubic feet.
Okay. So question I have, this is interesting, is ILSF, and I see the volume up to 79,898 there.
Yes.
What is that? Is what, a top of bank measurement, or what?
So that if you look on the plan, we have shown where the contour 220 is on the ground. So hypothetically, if you say that, you know, without doing the calculations, you added 1 foot of water on top of what was there. Keep in mind that in the time when we did this exercise, all we had to prove is that we were less than 10,000 cubic feet. So as part of to make it obvious to the commission, we said, hey, even if you add a foot on top of the existing water, you're still gonna be below the 10,000.
Okay.
Now
So
the goalpost has moved, has gone
I haven't
to
actually, I haven't
7,000.
seen, let me just step in here. So I don't think that we have a moving goalpost here. We have a,
No, no,
okay, so our regulation
yes.
define, and we frankly, we have not, I don't recall having addressed this in any other circumstance. ILSF, normally we're dealing with BVW and so forth.
The same, yeah,
So
that's
so
why.
So the question I have several, is that it was very isolated back there. There's neither an input or an output there. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's just a hole in the ground.
And is it stream fed? I mean, spring fed?
No.
So it's a drainage only. And what we don't know is whether, so as an isolated land subject to flooding, wetland vegetation around there, you're saying that our act or our regulations don't apply unless you meet that water volume threshold. So even if you have wetland plants, unless you have that threshold of water, it's still not applicable. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's something that the Goddard consulting team will have to help out. I can stand about the calculations if that
Okay, because my concern here is picking and choosing what time of year you have water there if it's a drainage basin. If you have it, although we did have a very wet year, which is potentially applicable. But the assumption typically would be that reviewing this in May may show that you hit that extra foot of water. So why don't I turn this over, Scott, on what I just outlined in terms of the question regarding vegetation, that it may exist there, even though your ILSF is smaller than what we call out. How you propose that we should regard something like that.
Sure. Thanks, John. I'll just chime in on that. So Scott Goddard, professional wetlands consultant. Zoe from my office is also on the call. And Artie, thank you for that. I do agree with, everything Artie did outline. We're kind of working together on this. The question that was initially posed to me, Mr. Chairman, was, did this area qualify as isolated land subject to flooding? That was the question that I was hired to ask based on my understanding of the enforcement action taken by the Conservation Commission. And I agree with Artie 100% that no matter how you cut these numbers, there's really no way that this water is going to qualify as ILSF under the bylaw or the act, regardless of whether it was looked at in May or in this case, August. And the reason for that is this is a groundwater fed system with a very, very little watershed. And this year in particular, we broke records for rainfall amounts, and by a direct observation in the world of wetlands, we've observed the collective cultural we of wetlands people have noticed that we were at or above seasonal high groundwater for the basically the entire summer this year, from spring straight through. So water levels in May were the same as they were in the summer months as well, because we had continuous heavy rainfalls that kept the groundwater table at a very high elevation. So we have sandy soils surrounding this area and a very small watershed. So we would expect very little fluctuation in groundwater table at that. It's not like a till or something like that where you get tremendous groundwater influxes and such like that, and elevation changes. So so the 219 number, which was where the direct observation was, and based on the bean poles that were placed there and observations of the homeowner during all these substantial storm events that we had in and around that time period, the water didn't move very much at all. I mean, it was within this kind of 1 to 2 inch ranges of fluctuation, nothing that would fluctuate a foot in this area. So ILSF is the mean high condition. So it's mean high groundwater plus a 1 year storm, which is like a 2.5
Jen.
inch storm. So we're right there at 219. That's it. That's mean annual high. That's probably even greater than mean annual high. So it's
So
something
you're,
less than that.
and
So
you're
I'm
basically saying, and that's roughly 5,000 cubic feet ballpark. Is that
Yeah,
what you're saying?
right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
And-
Then let me, thanks. And
So there's a second part to your question, though. The second part to your question, I think, was okay, if we accept, and I'm not going to put words in the mouth of the commission, but if we accepted that the calculations were true, that it's not isolated land subject to flooding under the act or the bylaw, then, well, is it maybe an isolated vegetated wetland that was altered instead under the bylaw? Again, that wouldn't be under the Wetland Protection Act, but under the bylaw. That's a harder question to answer, right? Because none of us had the benefit of seeing what this area looked like prior to the alteration. Right now, it's surrounded all by pine trees and effectively lacks vegetative cover. So whether it was ornamental, whether it was kind of barren, whether it was vegetated, I don't have records of that. I think Deb Anderson was out there, but she was also out there, after the work was done. And I don't have any records of photographs or what it would have looked like prior to that. So if there's a discussion to be had of what to do moving forward on this in the eyes of the commission, I think that might be more the conversation rather than the ILSF conversation.
Yep. Thanks. Janet, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, so our regulations are really clear, and I'm not sure neither Artie or Scott have addressed the fact that the language is that the boundary of isolated land subject to flooding is the perimeter of the area which would be inundated during a 100-year frequency storm event. So I have not seen any calculations. It's like, oh, we saw this, or it was really high this year, or it was based on observation, but our definition has very clear criteria, and it's the 100-year storm that you're supposed to evaluate the area. So I think we would hire our third-party reviewer. I believe Paul could address the isolated land subject to flooding issue. I believe he has PEs on his staff. The isolated vegetated wetland issue, there's no vegetation anymore. So I don't know how we address that, but I think for a fairly small amount of money, which should be paid for by the homeowner here, is to hire a third-party reviewer. This should not take much effort. This is a couple hours. I don't know why it's become so confused, but no one has addressed the fact that you're supposed to evaluate the depression, the volume of the depression based on what a 100-year frequency storm event would occur. So,
Thanks. I think that's Scott, I just had a question.
John, could I answer?
Why don't you answer that directly?
Yeah, let me answer that, and then we'll tackle the remaining questions, because I think Janet's question, although I understand where she's coming from, I think it's fairly easily handled. So when evaluating a land area for isolated land subject to flooding, there's two sort of tiers of evaluation, we'll call it. The first question is the area isolated land subject to flooding? In other words, does it meet the jurisdictional definition? Same when you're evaluating a BVW, for example, you're looking at different criteria. Is this a BVW? We have to ask the same questions for, is it ILSF? So the criteria is that whole quarter acre and sixth of an acre criteria that we were talking about earlier. If it qualifies as holding a quarter acre foot, or in the case of your bylaw, a sixth of an acre foot on an average annual condition, then the answer becomes, yes, it's ILSF. The question that Janet's asking then is, okay, if it's ILSF, where's then the boundary, the lateral extent? That becomes where you'd look at a 100-year storm event, which is the maximum water elevation. So first it has to be ILSF before you're discussing where the extent of it is. And in this case, Artie's calculation, TOP's calculations, any back of the napkin calculations that you do for this we're not even close to meeting the criteria of it first being ILSF. So there's no basis or need to do a 100-year storm calculation. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Well,
So
your tops and so forth is based on, is it based on this year's rainfall, or how
Yes.
does the tops, and it uses that and calculates where it algorithmically figures where the height of the water would be. Is that correct?
No. In this case, this is simply a question of geometry, right? We had direct observations this year. If of any year, that any of us have been doing wetlands work, we had the chance of observing something in excess of mean annual high water this year.
Mhm.
So if it didn't meet a 1/4 acre foot of water by direct observation this year,
Mhm.
we don't need to guess where we think seasonal high groundwater is by probes and, test pits and this kind of stuff. We don't need to assume the watershed contribution, which, by the way, is a very, very small watershed, all of Class A sandy soil. So there's going to be virtually no runoff contribution. This is a completely, in effect, groundwater fed system. So we had the benefit of seeing something north of mean annual high conditions. So all you have to do is look at the water, look at what the topography is below the water. And that was done by Artie's survey, Cheney Engineering, ground surveying it. We're not just guessing. And Artie did an approximated methodology of kind of trapezoids, estimating the slopes and everything like that. The tops guys looked at it with a more discrete pencil and calculated the elevation of water at the various points in the basin below elevation 219, which was the directly observed observation over the course of several months. So to me, it's a kind of a non-starter.
Okay, well, we're on the fringes here. There's no question. I think the whole thing is, number one, new to us because we normally don't encounter that.
Right.
The earlier numbers that you just presented, where a 6 acre foot was around 7,200 square cubic feet, but then you came in with a 7,900 cubic foot. What was that measurement there?
Hold on.
Was that going up to 220 elevation? Or
Correct.
Okay.
So Artie's he's just simply saying there's a bowl that goes higher on the ground than where the water was seen. And what he's saying, and I'm not going to put words in his mouth, he's here, he can corroborate this. He's saying if hypothetically water would have to get up to elevation 220 before jurisdiction was triggered, he's not saying that we reached 220. It never reached 220 this whole year.
Okay.
So we only reached 219.
So here's since I was out on site, and the normal thing is somebody excavates around a pond, and it triggers warnings.
Right.
Okay. So that's why we're down there. What I noticed down there, and I have one of these ponds in my backyard. It's a artificial pond that the reason it stays a pond is because it has a 6-inch layer of clay on the bottom. Okay. And George Hanny, I see you there. Do you know if you poked through that clay at all, or what happened while you were digging there?
No, we didn't poke through any clay. We were just cleaning like all the leaves and pine needles that were in it.
So this is, I'm just trying to suss out reality here. So one thing is, if the clay was removed, since it was artificially put there in the first place, or even just a shovelful of it was removed, would be whether you'd even get to your 219 ever, because you mentioned the soils are sandy and so forth. Did you do any augering there to check for hydric soils around the bank? Did either of the parties do anything on that?
Yes, we did, and we actually have some slides too. If you
okay,
like,
but let me just let's follow this thread for a bit, just a little bit. Did you find hydric soils around the bank?
So there's mucky soils in the standing water area. Yes.
Okay, but outside, just beyond that.
No.
Okay, and the what I noticed there was the vegetation within feet of the bank was predominantly pine trees.
Correct.
Which are normally not an indication of hydric soils.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So what part of me is we try to suss out, and even if we go to 220, we're looking at something that is a less than 10% variance from the 6 acre foot, but something that is is artificially enhanced with the layer of clay. And you have the small water, water drainage, watershed area there. So I'm just, again, wondering on a native basis, whether, again, it comes down to just vegetation. There's a depression there that had some form of vegetation, although most of it was mowed, which is another thing, so which compounds this. I'm just throwing all those out there. And Janet, I don't know if, relative to all that, if without the clay there, that doesn't come close to a 6 acre foot, but may have some wetland vegetation, spotty here and there, but has been mowed for all these years, where does that leave us?
So I think in most cases like this, when there's really a regulatory interpretation, my guess is, I believe that Paul probably even wrote this definition. I believe that we need further clarification. It will not cost much, but I think we need to do our due diligence here. We've gotten conflicting information, and I don't believe that the regulatory definition is being correctly applied here. So
you're saying our regulatory definition specifies a 100-year storm. Is that correct?
Yes, the boundary of isolated land subject to flooding is the perimeter of the area which would be inundated during a 100-year frequency storm event.
And so, which possibly at 220 being top of bank would be around 500 feet over the 500 to 600 feet over the threshold. Is what it seems.
John, I might think it might be more suitable to refer to where in your regulations it references the 1/6 of a acre foot, because that's in your definitions of whether or not this is ILSF. We're not talking about boundaries here of something that first isn't ILSF in the first place. So there's a distinction to be made here.
But if you're talking about perimeter, if you identify your perimeter, then you calculate your volume based on that perimeter.
Which, I mean, that makes sense. The question is, well, I agree with Janet. I think we can go spin over this. My frustration is we're basically, even if we're spinning on that, I had assumed that things were jurisdictional regardless, but we couldn't tell because of the damage done to the bank. But rather than spinning our wheels here, getting Paul involved, he'd give us a quote on it. And he'll just take a look at it, and we'll clarify that component of it. And I think it also gives us the ability for Paul to address the soil conditions, the native soil conditions, and the existence of the clay layer, which artificially creates something artificial in this, and then give us some guidance there. So that we can all come back and deal with something that we agree on or come close to agreeing on. So I think that's the way we should proceed. Commissioners, anybody have any questions or comments on this?
I'm sorry, I just have one quick question. It seems like in your entire definition, the first sentence of that part B, that isolated land subject to flooding, like Scott was saying, that in that definition itself, it says it is an area that at least once a year, it must confine this particular volume.
Yeah.
If it doesn't do that, then it is not that definition. So if we don't agree on that, then I don't know whether this language is incorrect or Janet's interpretation, or we're not reading it correctly. So that's the part I don't understand.
Well, I think that's a valid question. And one of the things we're looking at is what we have to date is observation, but we didn't, even though we had a lot of rain, we didn't have a 100-year storm. So,
but why are we talking about 100-year storm if the definition is for 1 year?
No, the definition is for, according to Janet, the definition to determine that boundary is a 100-year storm. There are calculations. Might be 8 inches. I can't remember exactly of rainfall within a prescribed time, and whether or not that would hold it. And if it would it raise the water level from the 219 to 220 and then take you over the threshold? And that's really what we're looking at.
But
I think John, what he's saying is what Vadran, he's the owner applicant in this case, is the definition he just cited says annually or once per year. So once per year and once every 100 years are two very different analyses.
Well, I agree. And so I don't have that in front of me. Jan, do we have two different definitions?
No, it's a four-parter. It's a 4-sentence definition, and there's no or. It's everything in it. And it in the end, it recommends that calculations, the fact that it even references drainage calculations to determine makes me think the 100-year frequency storm event is a key component of defining the area. And it also says the commission may require that a registered professional engineer or other person whose qualifications are deemed acceptable, shall consider all of this. So this is one of the more complicated areas I have seen of a resource area. So that is why I'm recommending due diligence.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying, do we have something in those 4 sentences there, regardless of drainage or whatever? How does it read where it addresses the 100-year storm? Or is that in a separate paragraph elsewhere?
No, it's all one paragraph, and it's what I had read to you previously.
Okay, let's go through it again, please.
Okay.
If you could read it out.
The boundary of isolated land subject to flooding is the perimeter of the area which would be inundated during a 100-year frequency storm event.
Okay. Now, is that clear?
No, that's not clear to me, because I don't think that was not the whole paragraph. I think we should.
Okay, I just want to. But that sentence is clear, right? That's kind of unambiguous.
That sentence is not the way that it's being read is honestly misleading.
Well, okay, let's move on to the other sentences. I just wanted to. Okay, please. Okay,
so go ahead. This is the other part, or the maximum extent of flooding observed or recorded in said area, whichever is larger.
Okay.
So if you observe something that wasn't the 1/6 acre foot, but your drainage calculations for in a 100-year storm does show it, it's whichever is larger.
Okay.
So the minimum is looking at it and doing your calculations under the 100-year. And then if visual observations or historical shows it larger, then that expands it. But
I'm sorry, this really sounds like we're interpreting this differently, Janet, with all due respect. The first sentence establishes the definition of what is considered the ILSF. And if it is considered, if it meets the volume criteria, then what is the boundary for that? So if this is not the way it's being read, then essentially all you really need, you can have something that's as small as 1/18 or whatever of an acre foot. And then you can say, well, you know what? Since everything is like a bowl in a backyard or in the middle of a street, and a 100-year storm can easily be like 10 cubic feet of water, so this can be wetland. That's not the reality. That's not what this is saying. I believe this seems to be saying that the first part, you gotta have the volume that meets the 1/6 of an acre foot first. The second part seems to be saying, if you meet that criteria, then the boundary that is jurisdictional is the level of elevation that corresponds to a 100-year storm.
Yes.
That's what I'm seeing. I understand, and I'm not sure if you guys are gonna ask me to pay more money to hire somebody else after everything I just spent to just go and have inspect things that if there was something from Debbie's report that you guys had disagree with in terms of the biology, in terms of the science, or in terms of the agriculture, in terms of this stuff, please point it out. If it's
Okay,
not
let
that,
me,
then
okay, Ben, I understand this, but Vajra, let's start from the beginning. You took the word of a broker, and you basically, the intention was to, I don't know if you're looking to fill the pond or if you just were cleaning it up and you're going to maintain the pond. I actually don't know what your intention is there, okay? But regardless of what you did, it was obviously a jurisdictional component of something. Can somebody bring that back up, please?
Scott should do it. Scott, or
No, Artie was doing it. He had it
Artie,
up.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So let me just address this, and we're going to move on, because I've asked these other questions relative to things because my concern is this is an artificially created pond. There is no thriving wetland vegetation there. Okay, there's no question that we're going over and over on a definition, but I also want everyone to think about the value of the resource. Is this a value resource, or was this just somebody's swimming hole? And even over several decades, still did not expand and create another a greater resource area. When if you can roll this down just a little bit there, it says as stated. No, up the other way. Sorry. As stated in the Wetlands Protection Act. Okay, that's the Wetlands Protection Act. That's not us. Okay, that's the state. Okay, it says that it's an area with at least once a year confines the standing water to that. Now, we don't know once a year unless we let a whole year go by to review that. So then the bylaw takes a look and it says, okay, we want to review this on a smaller amount of area. We don't need a 1/4 acre. We just need a 6 acre. Okay, that has an average depth of at least 6 inches, which seems to qualify. Okay, and then it defines there for our bylaw, the boundary is subject to the perimeter, which would be inundated during a 100-year storm. Okay, so the bylaw takes precedence over the state. The state basically refers to the existence of this and how they deal with it. We tighten it up, and we also, our wording states that how you determine this is not visual observation. You determine it for the Dover bylaw by running the calculations for a 100-year storm. Okay, and those calculations, Vajra, are almost back of the envelope for an engineer, and the TOPS program probably can calculate it as well. And that will define whether or not the water would rise up and actually hit that 220 level. That's what we're looking for. I don't see one outlines how the state views at it. The second paragraph outlines how the town looks at it, and that's the one we're looking at. My frustration, which is probably shared by you, is that we are within a less than 10% variance, if even that 100-year storm would bring that water up there. My next question to the board and to Janet would be, if it doesn't, do we have no jurisdiction on this? And does that allow a homeowner to just fill in the depression? Janet, what's your take on that? Oh no, you're muted.
Janet, you're muted.
So, just a quick response. I think we have to apply the definition properly. That would be the first step. And if it isn't, then there's been a presumption that it doesn't protect the value sufficiently. Wildlife habitat, flood control, groundwater protection, vegetation, all those interests. But if it does, then I'd say, this is a legitimate concern from a wetland protection point of view, that if it does meet that definition, it serves probably the majority of interests. And to simply fill a pond, I would say
I'm not saying that. My question is, we have to determine whether it can hold enough water to meet those interests. My question is on a what if basis. If it doesn't hold enough water to do that, then does that mean that none of it is jurisdictional for us?
That's right. I would say yes.
Okay, Amy?
Well, to throw another spanner in the works, this could easily be functioning as a vernal pool, which we
See
wouldn't
any evidence?
know.
Yeah, we
What?
wouldn't know.
We
Yeah.
wouldn't know because so much has happened to it. Might know next spring, but that's
And is there
probably
an
a long time from
is there an area requirement for a vernal pool?
No,
I don't think
Okay,
so.
the state has a 10,000 cubic foot, 10,000
Well,
quarter acre
I don't
cubic
know.
foot.
I don't remember, but anyway, that would just be my concern that we, this is a pretty big, looked like a pretty big pond to me, and we certainly have vernal pools on Boynton's land that have been certified that are smaller. But I didn't do the site walk. I haven't been there. I don't know how big it is from except for the pictures that were taken and stuff. But anyway, I just, I guess I don't want to put homeowners through additional expense, but this seems like there's enough controversy around it that
Had a question.
$200
if I could just, a vernal pool
isn't
is
bad.
by definition temporary. Is that right?
Not necessarily, no.
So
No.
you can have water all year round?
The one in Springdale, in 46 Springdale rear, that has water year round most years.
So same with Claybrook.
No, I've seen, well, I don't know. There may be a small pocket in Claybrook. So you had a comment?
It's the vernal pool is just whether or not, usually it just doesn't have an inlet and an outlet, therefore it doesn't have fish.
Right. So I saw that, and that's potentially I didn't see any.
Guess
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't.
I'm voting to. My inclination would be to have Paul take a
absolutely.
look at our language. If we need to clean it up, then maybe we should clean it up. If we to make sure that it's clear next time for everybody, and if he doesn't feel that it's jurisdictional, then that's great. But I think we need him.
Zoe, you had a comment?
Hi everyone, Zoe from Goddard Consulting. I was just going to add that was addressed in the previous report that was submitted by the wetland scientist Deb that was originally involved in this project. And I just wanted to add that it was never observed to be dry, but now if being dry is in question to qualify as a vernal pool, my understanding is they have large seasonal fluctuations during the winter and spring. They fill with snow, rain, seasonal high groundwater, and typically dry most of summer and fall to allow for the breeding to happen.
You're saying in terms of defining a vernal pool, is that?
Yeah.
But this appears to have water year round.
Correct.
That's what I'm hearing. Okay.
Yes.
So and the question I have is, Vardran, when we first spoke to you, you were it seemed your original intention was to just clean up around there, but to maintain the pond. Are you rethinking that depending on how things go?
So I don't. So here's the thing. I have small children. I have a 2-year-old and I have a 3-year-old. And what my concern was, I don't want them to go in the water while the dogs are playing or they just run in there and something happens to them. So I wanted to decrease the depth of the pond and add sand in the bottom of the pond. And that's it. And allow the kids to be able to play and not touch anything.
So still have water in there, but just a sandy bottom, or?
Yes, just make sure it's not, I don't like the depth. If you look at in the middle, the depth can be over like 3 feet or so. And I didn't want something to happen to my kids. That was the main reason. Now with everything that's being discussed, it's been, you know, I answered your question, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Anna, you had a question?
Janet actually had her hand up first, so we can do that order.
I saw yours first, so why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, if we're talking about partial wetlands fill, I do think which would be the most extreme case scenario. This may not be isolated land subject to flooding, but if it is, it's wetlands and we would maybe filling it. I do think it's important to be really precise. If we can step back and just do a restoration, I would care less about getting Paul in, though I think it's a great idea and I generally support that. But if it's a project that's going to continue, I do think we have to be pretty darn accurate in how we're applying this.
And I think it's an interesting point, and it's one that I didn't quite bring up, but which is currently, with the assumption with an enforcement order, we're looking at a restoration. We didn't have proof of what it actually looked like at top of bank, but basically leading right up to top of bank was lawn. So, you know, the issue there is there's not much of a restoration that would actually even be required based on what was originally there, which is kind of interesting. Janet, you?
So I don't think we know for sure there was lawn from the house to the pond. I saw
I went through Google Earth for around 15 years, and it basically was patchy. It was there was lawn in numerous areas around it, whether it wasn't golf course maintained lawn, but it did seem like it was being maintained in some form. But go ahead, Janet.
So I just wanted to clarify the record. The regulatory report done by Deb Anderson was only based on the Wetlands Protection Act. We have a very different and more stringent definition of vernal pool under our bylaw. So I just want to make that point. Basically, Deb Anderson's report was we don't believe it meets the number 1/4 acre, and so sort of dismissed as non-jurisdictional. But
what is the town's? What's the town's area for that?
What was that?
What is the town size for that? Or do we have a size? How does the town define that? The bylaw?
The 1/6 acre foot volume.
So that's viewing both. So 1/6 acre foot is used for both ILSF as well as vernal pool?
Oh, no. Vernal pool is any size. Our definition of vernal pool is any size.
Okay. And then George?
Yes, I just wanted to chime in. I've been maintaining the lawn as well. Obviously, we did the construction aspect to it, but I've been mowing the lawn there for 2 years now, I believe, since Vadran moved in. And I've been there, all times of the year. And I've witnessed, the pond stay exactly the same level throughout those 2-year periods. In the spring, winter, it's always been the same. And there's been grass up to the end of the pond that we've been, we mow it on a weekly basis. And we have, 1,000-pound, 1,500-pound stand-on lawnmowers, and we can go right up to the edge of the pond and not slip in to the pond. Like the ground is never wet there. The area does soak up water very well all around the pond.
On the backside, have you mowed the backside as well?
Yeah, the backside, same thing. It's all very sturdy land all around the pond. And, basically the point I'm trying to make with that is that in some areas, on some properties, we have push mowers to where, on the edges of ponds or
because it gets too soppy.
in wetlands area, you know, we
Yeah.
have to push mow it because it's so soppy, and we'll just
Mhm.
sink or go into the pond.
Mhm.
And that's never been a case here for the 2 years, obviously up until August that
Mhm.
we've been mowing it. But we started in you know, the spring with the spring cleanup and never had any issues.
Okay, well, I appreciate that that input there. So what I'm, because of the nature of this, and nobody can agree on anything, and it's very frustrating because as I said, we're potentially within 500 or 700 feet of defining anything. Um, the I want to continue this. What we'll do is contact Ecotech and touch base with Paul McManus and get an idea of what his review would entail, outlining the things that have been brought to light in tonight's meeting. And then at the next meeting, or possibly via email prior to that, depending on what we get for information, we'll let you know where we're at. And I think in order to, we need an outside expert who, as Amy mentioned, may have actually written the bylaws regarding defining things. Let's see what costs we're looking at, what time we're looking at, and see. And I also want to bring up some of the other issues I brought up as well, and get some guidance relative to overall jurisdiction on this. So I appreciate
John,
everyone's.
can I go? Can I go one more round on this if we could?
Fine, go for it.
Thanks. I knew you'd say that, John, so I appreciate it. A couple things.
I'm keeping score, Scott. Yeah.
That's okay. That's okay.
Next.
You said that there was some confusion and disagreement on this. I'm not sure I fully agree with that. You know, the TOPS engineers agreed on the volume of being in the 3,000 to 4,000 square foot range. Artie at Cheney.
Based on is that based on observation? Is that correct?
Yep,
Scott?
that's the 219 elevation.
So I'm not, TOPS should be able to figure out, they have all the data. Why don't they throw a 100-year storm in there and see what you come up with?
Hold on one sec. So then Artie, he agrees with those those numbers. He expressed it himself, and that's not within 500 cubic feet. That's several thousand cubic feet away from where it needs to be. It's more like 60% of the total amount. I'm agreeing with those numbers. The only disagreement that I'm hearing is that Janet is insisting that we measure a 100-year storm event when the bylaw was just put on the screen. And if you can throw that back up there one more time, the one thing that I have not heard the commission discuss tonight is the fact that the 1/6 of an acre threshold specifically states, John, that it happens each year.
Pull it up, Artie. Paragraph 2 supersedes the first one. So take a look at paragraph 2.
I'm in paragraph 2.
Okay.
It says, additionally, the Dover Wetlands Protection Bylaw defines ILSF as the following, quote, an area which at least, this is the key part to the whole thing.
I'm here, yeah.
Least once a year, it says, to confine standing water to a certain volume. So it has to have that happen. If we don't have a 1/6 of an acre foot of water once per year to 6 inches of depth, then
Scott, what's the next sentence say?
Right. So
Scott, what does the next sentence read?
The next sentence mirrors the same language.
No, it does not, Scott.
Protection Act.
The boundary of isolated land subject to flooding is the perimeter of the area which would be inundated during a 100-year storm or the observed maximum extent.
Correct. I agree.
Whichever is larger.
Whichever is larger, Scott. You haven't shown us a year. Please stop.
So this is like arguing about the Second Amendment.
No, don't worry. Listen, I don't mind if you have Paul review this. I'm confident Paul will agree with.
Scott, why don't you just have your TOPS guy run it as a 100-year flood?
I don't believe the applicant in this case.
Scott, I appreciate that, but you in previous projects, I distrust your motives and motivation. So if you want to continue this, have your TOPS guys run it. If you do not want to continue this, tell us now. Are
I
we
don't
clear?
believe I don't believe
Scott,
the
are we
applicant
clear?
in this case would be willing to pay for
Scott,
the.
are we clear?
Yeah, hold it. Let me jump in, Jim. Okay. So the Scott, you didn't address the second sentence of the second paragraph. It follows right after that first one.
I am happy to address that.
Does it not say, you know, it knows until you do that 100-year storm, you actually don't know where the border is of this depressed area. So until you apply the 100-year portion of that, and you know, that seems very clear, and that's what we're going on. I'm not sure where you have to argue on that. Does that sentence not mean anything, or
I'm sorry.
No, that sentence, John, is actually
so
that sentence is a very important sentence. I think.
Scott, show us the 100-year.
So
if you don't
Jim,
show us the 100-year,
why are we doing the 100-year if
because
it is
that's
not
what the
an
bylaw
ILSF?
says, Vadran.
The second
that
sentence.
is what the bylaw
okay.
says, or give us a year's data.
Okay, so
you can do a year's
no,
data
no,
observation.
excuse me, Jim.
Okay, so you want a year simulation,
I'm going
right,
to start
Jim?
muting people.
Is that
I'm going to start muting people. Vadran, everyone just, calm down here. My reading of this, that's there as an additional clarification, and that's the one that rules for our bylaw. So you need to figure out the 100-year storm, period. Because if that 100-year storm overflows the banks that you have, but that grade is still lower than everything else around it, then you're certainly qualify for ILSF. If it doesn't reach the 220 level, then you're dealing with the potential non-jurisdictional depression. So it's easy enough for somebody to do the math. The TOPS guy already helped me out here. Dealing with TOPS, 15 minutes to run a 100-year storm if he already has the data.
So I can't speak for TOPS, but for us will be difficult to calculate the 100-year storm event. And the reason for that is that you got to study the entire area to see how much water and what is the extent of the basin that's going to contribute the water. So you have to
well, that's
the
the way. Okay, I understand.
So
you have to look at that.
I don't know what TOPS have done.
Fine. My ruling tonight for this is that our regulation calls that out for a reason. That's what we're going to go by. So we're going to go and we will contact our expert and get an idea of what's involved for him to review this. In the meantime, if you look into TOPS or you look into some other way and you want to calculate that number accurately, and you can show us elsewise, then that's certainly something that may short circuit things. But my ruling on this is that's what our bylaw says. There was a reason that they made that bylaw stricter. Okay. I have other frustrations that I've mentioned because we know that we're very close to things here. However, that's what we have to follow.
Okay.
So that's where we're going to go. We're going to go ahead and continue this to the next meeting. Work on yourself, Vadran, in terms of, if you find out what your people, what it would cost, or if you can get them to run the 100-year run. We will talk to our outside consultant, and we're not going to do any work without, running it by you. And we'll find out what he thinks his review would cost.
Okay.
And then, we have to do that because we have two disagreeing parties here. We need a third party.
So can I briefly summarize so I know exactly what I'm dealing with here? Because, it seems like this entire thing is for me to spend money from the beginning. It's no problem. So this is what I hear you say, John. You tell me that I need to figure out a way to pay Paul to be a third party. You tell me that I need to run an analysis for a 100-year storm. No problem. This is the only thing I'm going to ask you. In the 100-year storm calculation, what is not going to be taken into account is whether we have this clay there that kind of takes a way to keep the water level at this particular elevation no matter what. There's a reason why it's not rising. Do I need to have a computer simulation that is not able to actually take this part into account, because this type of thing may not have been included in the software calculation, and spend that money to show you that, hey, anybody can guess that. I don't need a fluid dynamics model to tell me that if I have a lot of rain in a bucket, in a bucket in my backyard, that, hey, it's gonna rise and it's gonna go above that limit. I don't need a model to tell me that, okay? But if we have, I'm gonna ask people about, hey, if there's a clay layer that kind of equates and figure out a way to keep the elevation the same, what is the likelihood that whatever 100 or 1,000, a billion year storm happens, how does that impact the water level? And if somebody can tell me that, you know what, once you have the clay, it doesn't matter, are we okay to put this to bed?
Okay, so I appreciate that. And I brought that up earlier because I shared the same question. That's why I brought it, brought it to people's attention. That is right in line with the type of stuff that Ecotech, Paul McManus, that we've been referring to, is something that we would have him look at as well, because he would also know jurisdictionally, both on a state and a town basis, whether we have the ability to, via program or whatever, to see what would happen if you took the clay out of there, or if we can take the clay out of there. What we don't know is once it's there, is there, and we know it's artificial, can it be removed under the Wetlands Protection Act? So those are the things that he can answer, and he can probably answer off the top of his head at very minimal cost for there. So I think that's a very valid question, which is we have something that's artificial. The other thing is, if you don't see the water change that much with all the rain that we've had this summer, then it may be draining through the sides anyway, percolating through the sides. So a 100-year storm may not make much of a difference. But those are the things that, let's see how much Paul's going to charge for his review. And you can also look into those aspects, but do keep that in mind that even septic systems, when they look at things for percolation, the sides of that perk as well, which may explain why it seems to keep the level regardless of what time of year. So, and the bonus there is potentially is that if it doesn't rise, if it perks all the way through a 100-year storm, then we're looking at something we haven't approached before, or encountered, which is it may not be jurisdictional. So that, I think it'd be for relatively short money to get all that clarified. That's why I'm ruling that we go ahead and do that.
Well, John, I'll be excited to see what Paul says. I would welcome him to look at this, honestly, at this point. And I think we'll wait to hear from Paul. And if Paul affirms the need to run the 100-year storm, then we can do it at that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So yeah, and as we're going to have him go ahead and look at that second paragraph, probably a little differently than you did, but he, like Amy said, he may have helped write it. So yeah, let's just go ahead. We're so close to having the right amount of information. So let's close this circle so that we can finish this up. Okay, so thank you everyone for your spirited discussion, and Vardman, we are not trying to spend your money in any stretch. We just really want to make sure that we have things covered.
No, you're not.
I understand your stress. It's stressful, and it's stressful to us as well, because we're neighbors, we're residents, so we understand this. So I appreciate your understanding there. So thank you everyone for that, and we'll see you the next time. Okay. And
John, before I leave, one quick update. We provided the commission with an updated letter and report and planting plan for 10 Draper Road. Deb emailed.
When was that?
Deb emailed it a couple of hours ago, and we plan to be on the next meeting 3 weeks from now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's see. Let me pull up our agenda again. And okay, so outside of the commission's discussion, do we have anyone else in front of us to review anything? Is there anything else for us to review, Janet?
No.
Okay. So given that, why don't we, let's see, why don't you go ahead and give us your, just going into the second page in terms of updates. Let's go through our updates, and then we'll deal with, your reporting 1 through 9. Or 1 through 8, and then we'll finish up with the land management and our upcoming budget issue. Okay. So if you can go ahead, Janet.
You want me to go ahead with my agent's report?
Yes, please.
All right. The first item, you all got a copy. Sarah had indicated a possible violation at 6 Farm Street. I did go out yesterday. It does not appear jurisdictional. But I'm waiting to hear back from the building inspector. So just so everyone knows, Walter always requires, whether or not it appears there's a wetland or not, that we get a letter from every developer for every building permit of a structure, that they sign off that they are not 200 feet from a river or 100 feet from a wetland. So that's sort of our first line of defense. If they can't do that, then Walter refers them to us. So I just have a call into him to see if we've gotten that or not. But just based on my site evaluation, it looks like they're outside our jurisdiction.
Thank you for checking it, Janet. I also, I think, sent you an email, but maybe I forgot to hit send about it because I was in the middle of something else. But the reason that I think that Sarah and I are particularly concerned about this property is that the homeowner has not necessarily been the most cooperative with town regulations and boards, and certainly not been happy about it. So
yes, I did meet with her, and I picked up on that. Yes.
Or him. Yeah.
Well, I met a woman out there who
you're lucky then.
Okay.
Let's see, 92 Haven. We approved that NOV at our last meeting. That just went out today, so I don't have any update. 12 and 14 Miller Hill has been reviewed by Libby, our town council. She had some recommendations, which I just got today. And so my suggestion was, again, there isn't a huge urgency here because nothing's going to happen until the spring anyways, in terms of planting. So my recommendation was to have all our friends come back, review her red lines, and then we can finalize it at that next meeting, if that sounds good to everyone.
So my question, because there's a reasonable amount of red line stuff that would still go in the folder but would not be part of the enforcement action. So Lori, did that get sent out to everybody?
No, I don't believe so, because it just came in today. So okay. I didn't think we'd be able to.
Yeah. So if you could send that out to commissioners for commissioners to review, so that we can get some feedback on that. They seem to be appropriate, and part of the idea is to try to have the recordable document be more directly on point. And yet the backup information is part of the record and is maintained in the office. But I think it's scintillating reading. So if people could have a chance to review that, appreciate it. Okay, Janet.
And I did get contacted by someone from GZA who's going to be working with the owner at 12 Miller Hill, who wanted to go out and do a site visit, but I'm going to respond to him. I think until the order goes out, we really shouldn't be doing any site work out there. And I'm assuming we will continue to have Paul be the lead on this. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure.
Thanks. Go ahead.
I'm not sure what the funding we had into that escrow account for Paul's peer review.
Do you know, Lori, off the top of your head? And has Paul billed anything against that yet?
Is this for 1214 Miller Hill?
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything. It's been.
So did we form, that's a question I had for Lori. So did Paul go out there and review, he went out and reviewed the flagging, is that correct? At one point?
Right, yes.
Yeah, so we have, so there should be an escrow account set up of some form, and you're not recalling that. So
I don't believe there's anything that's been set up.
Okay, so no deposit or anything of that sort. So why don't you
Checks.
check with Paul, please, to see his take on it and whether or not he just did it as a billable favor to us when we wanted to, the quick thing we wanted to do was get the flagging done. And I think we have discussed having him review it because he actually mentioned that he has people in his office who have the appropriate qualifications. So I think maybe we just didn't close the circle on this.
I think so. I don't think any estimates been given, and I haven't seen any checks come in. So
okay. So and I think Janet, that's an appropriate concern too, because one of the reasons we're looking to use Paul is not just for the expertise, but also the ability that it's for maintaining our own budget. And then that would be if he's involved, then what level of involvement would you have relative to reviewing, a site visit with their, with
right. That's why I bring that.
contractor.
It was my understanding Paul was going to. My notes show that the commission did vote to bring Paul on as the official third-party reviewer.
Mm-hmm.
For Paul there, I mean.
So, well, why don't we just give him a call tomorrow and see what his understanding is, and then we'll review those minutes and then just proceed accordingly. Okay. And then that will make it that will define, Janet. It still should be discussed in terms of in terms of your involvement relative to reviewing the enforcement order versus Paul, in terms of we need to define who's reviewing what, and then we'll clarify that.
Right.
Okay.
No, it's my understanding that Paul was doing all site work and then also evaluating the restoration plan and the invasive management plan. Yeah.
That's and so somewhere we just didn't, like I said, didn't close that circle. So we'll get an update from him tomorrow.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Okay, so that'll come back to us. That'll be on our 29th agenda. And hopefully we can then close that out. The next item is 3 Tubrek Drive. You'll recall they put in an underground propane tank without a permit. We issued an enforcement order that they have to do a restoration plan. They came back. I don't know if that got sent out to everyone or not, but it's very straightforward. 12 ferns, 2 mountain laurels, 2 azaleas, 2 red maples, and that provides good coverage. And that is in compliance with our buffer zone planting guidelines. So if everyone's comfortable, I would ask that you vote to approve the 3 Tubrek plan restoration planting plan.
Okay. And that comes under what you referred to earlier, and those you think the scale is such that it doesn't require a wetland planting expert to review that because of the small nature of it?
That's right. And it is in accordance with our guidelines.
Okay. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve that. Anyone want to come up? So move for anything?
Planting plan for 3 Tubrek.
Oh, great. Thanks, Jim. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Our second has left us. Okay, great. All in favor? Amy?
Aye.
Amra? Anna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay.
Okay.
And then 81 and 85?
I did send out the final town response to Mass Housing on this. It's quite a long list of concerns by all different town departments. So that went out on October 27th. We should hear back. I'm not sure if it'll have any impact, but we'll find out. The next item is the Charles River Watershed is doing a comprehensive climate resilience survey. I sent that out yesterday. And if people can do that, it's a really quick survey, but could be helpful. And the deadline on that is November 15th. Next item is the Trout Brook, Chickering, and Edgewater Drive 40B. The ZBA hearing was continued on November 2nd. They're moving forward with the peer review. Lots of questions about flooding and filling and how this could be allowed. Most of the neighbors felt, they were told it was unbuildable. So, so that moves forward. That will probably be at least another 2 months before we would get any kind of filing on that.
Okay.
On the Dover Housing Task Force, that is an initiative by the selectmen in response to all the 40Bs that we're seeing. Anna and I attended that meeting today. You saw a copy of my memo. When I worked in Wellesley, we had a town development review team that I think could work very well in Dover to try to be more proactive. Lots of questions about, do we try to reach out to potential landholders, work with them? Do we reach out to developers? So all of that is in progress, and Anna and I will keep you updated. The last item is the article for the newsletter. We had the ecological value of trees was the topic we came up with. I haven't had a chance to write that. The deadline is the 17th. So I'll get that out in draft form to everyone, hopefully over this weekend, and you can let me know if you have any comments.
Okay, great, thanks. And okay, then let's move back up. There's a land management work group update.
Yeah, it's Bog Bridge time.
What's that?
It's Bog Bridge time. We have a proposal, and it has some actual estimates. So there's my window. So I emailed this out Monday. I didn't totally expect everyone to necessarily get a chance to see it, but I hope most folks did. Greg wrote the vast majority of this, so I don't want to take too much credit here. But Rick and Greg have been working hard on this. Basically, it's to replace this incredibly sketchy bog bridge. I think everyone knows it. It's 10 minutes, 15 minutes into Wildwoods. And it's at this incredible slant. It's just basically going into the water. The new plan is a more standard plan so this was done by Boy Scouts, as we all know. The idea is to replace it with a more standard plan that is consistent with more what the U.S. Forest Service does. It's also something that Greg knows from Acton Trails has used. So basically, most of this is construction. This is roughly what it's going to look like. This is, I believe, Acton. We expect it to be 10 to 15 years. I feel like that's an underestimate, but I am not the person to do that. I think they're talking about pretty solid materials and not literally sitting it in water. There will be plastic between the water and the wood, so I think that's an improvement, but we'll see.
It's the same construction that we used for the bog bridges in the other parts of Wildwoods, and when did George go to Florida? Because it was before he went to Florida.
That's probably 6 to 7 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're at least 10 years old, and they look pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to get more than 10 to 15. Various drawings explaining this, and the construction plan. The construction plan is to assemble it in pieces on a nearby resident, Jerry Arnold, I believe, and then drag it in to Wildwoods with a tractor, and then lift it by hand and put it where it should go. And then take out the existing bridge. The idea is to do as much work as we can in the winter when the ground's frozen, but probably we'll need to pull out the bridge now before it freezes solid. So there's that. If we can reuse chunks, we will. The great news is it doesn't have to be as long as it currently is. We don't entirely know why, but it's 50 feet long and believe it can be done a good deal shorter. Where did I put that number? Yeah, 32, so we think we can do it at 32, and that's a reduction of literally sitting wood in the wetlands. There's that.
Actually, Anna, I had a question. So are you looking at taking it from 48 inches to 36 inches?
Yeah, so it's 50 inches or 50 feet long, 48 inches wide. We're going to take it down to 32 feet long, 36 wide.
Okay, and I just for Amy, do horses use this, or do they just go through the? Okay, great.
No,
so
you never.
So the width is okay.
Never.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Continue.
I think if you look at the picture that Anna had of the horse and tractor trail is to the right of the failed bridge. So if you look all the way to the right hand side, you'll see where the trail goes, like that's sort of the straight part of the trail, and the bog bridge is kind of a jog off to the side.
Got it. Okay. Carry on, Anna.
Yeah. So that's, I'll jump back down. Apologies for scrolling so fast. So I think that's the
And
gist
do we have
of it.
You go all the way down to the last page? Okay.
Last
so then
page, yeah, so that's
okay. So that's wasn't the original price getting close to like $9,000 or something, or?
Yeah, this is about half of what we thought originally. And I have come up with as many contingencies as we can think of, so I don't think we're going to be coming back. And yes, partly it's different materials, partly I think we were estimating labor. We're expecting to do it all volunteer at this point.
Okay, great. Time frame?
So we're not totally sure when we're going to start pulling the bog bridge out, but the idea is to work on it December, January.
Okay. Time for a vote for approval. What are you looking for?
3,100 just to allocate the funds. It's replacing the existing structure, so we don't think we need to do an RDA or anything. But yeah, we just wanted to take a vote for the funds.
Okay. How many of those pipes do you have in place? Are you going to be using 4 of them, or do you know?
I don't know offhand. I think it's 4, but it could be a little more frequently.
They're surprisingly expensive.
I think Greg talked to the DPU and they may have some.
6.
Okay. And 20 by 12, 20 inch. 20 feet by 12. So that's basically 2 10-footers. So 100-footer, 10-footers. So yeah, it's because I deal with those relatively frequently. So if you need to pay any more, it might be within the $100 range. So I would just to cover, I would add 10% to that as a I didn't see that figure there if you had a anything in there, but I think adding 10% to that would be appropriate. Or you have delivery fees. I would think 3,400 to encumber. Would be appropriate.
Yeah, I was going to say 3,500.
Yeah, I'm not averse to that. I think to go with 35, and if you don't spend it all, bully for us. And I am is that I don't think we need any additional drawings or anything like that. Does anybody have any concerns about voting on that this evening? Then I would entertain a motion to to encumber $3,500 for the Wildwoods boardwalk replacement as proposed.
So moved.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Amy?
Aye.
Amara?
Aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So great. That's the fastest thing we've accomplished. So you can take that off, Anna. Thanks.
Great.
Let's
Awesome.
see. Yeah, no, great work. Thank you very much. And it's having many hands help, spreads it out. So I appreciate the cross-departmental help there. Let's see. Next thing we have, let's see, is there anything else up besides your invoice and budget, Janet?
I think
we have,
there was some other discussion on land management that Anna.
Oh, okay, great. Then let's go ahead and address that.
Yeah, so the other thing was this memo that went out that was talking about our thoughts for full year 2024 and 25 budgets. So here's the thinking for this year is to just kind of continue where we are. We've been going over various projects we could do. I've talked about the strategic land management plan, doing smaller land management plans. So this year, the idea is to do the Bog Bridge, maybe start on a small land management, maybe do other trail work, kind of not do a huge amount of, and or possibly get started on a strategic land management plan. We're currently getting a sense of what we want to do, talking to Mass Audubon around cost and looking at that. The idea for next year is, this is more where we're spending our time because of the deadlines. The idea for next year is actually right now to keep it flat in the operating budget. We're thinking that as far as land management planning goes, getting going on the strategic land management plan is the main idea. That will be to take a step back, look at all the different properties, think about how to prioritize managing which ones and why, maybe biting off some of the larger land management plans we haven't done. And so Janet called around to other conservation agents and said, how do you all do this? And folks came back and said the conservation fund is typically what is done here, not operating budget. So we're currently thinking to recommend for land management wise, this is separate from anything else like we as Concom want to do, recommend land management wise, just keep it flat and then take the time that's different between the operating budget due dates and the warrant article due dates to figure out how much we actually would want to ask for the conservation fund. Maybe put it back to the 50,000. That's the first idea. I understand it was kicked down for some reason. That was before my time. It used to be 50K a year and became 25K a year, and I don't know why. So we wanted to figure that out. But that's the current thinking on land management budgets.
Okay, so we currently, thank you. We currently have a $25,000 management budget and a $5,000 land management account as well. That's typically for creating land management plans. In the past, we've hired somebody from Audubon to generate a plan and so forth. So, and that also includes the mowings of the fields that we have. And so my concern there is those prices have been going up and we're probably getting close to $10,000 a year on that. And so I think I would feel comfortable keeping the 25,000 for that. Just bureaucratically, it's sort of helpful there, and it also gives us a little bit more flexibility for things. The other concern, and we'll address that when we address Janet's issues, that we have been reaching into that, and in order to pay some of Janet's overages, and we're going to try to proactively work with town management to not have to do that. So when you mentioned other towns, were they going into WPA funds or what? Where I you lost me a little bit in terms of where they were grabbing their money for trail maintenance.
Yeah, it's the conservation fund, which is I learned reading the statute is allowed for Concom to create. It's part of the chapter that creates us also gives us the ability to create a static fund for trail maintenance, for appraisals, for all sorts of stuff, and then keep it in the fund, and it specifies the different ways we can invest it if we so choose, but not turn it back as operating and just can hold it there in savings or whatever. So the idea would be to use that.
So we'd be creating a separate fund that we that we don't currently have.
I think we already have it.
No,
yeah. So where? Yeah, I'm just wondering where that money's coming from.
It's voted at town meeting every year. It was up to 50,000, and then it was.
Oh, okay. So that's for land acquisition.
It can also be for this stuff.
Yeah,
it has a broader. Does have a broader scope if we wanted to. We've never used it that way. We've always just asked for a maintenance budget, which has always been pretty small. So, depending on what let's get the money out of the town either way. If we can build up both, that's good. If we start managing the land better, maybe they'll give us even more money to acquire it.
Well, yeah, so that's my understanding as it's presented at town meeting and so forth, is that acquisition money is there and it accumulates in by design. And it's an easy ask because we can very easily show people why, we use it for, for getting CRs and, we bring up examples there. I'm a little concerned about making it a working fund that would also deal with maintenance. I think in talking to town administrator and several other departments, if we possibly set up a particular fund that maybe dealt with or we made our trail maintenance budget so that we could accumulate it, that we didn't have to turn it over. And I agree with you, Amy, that if we can start actually doing some of this stuff, then we can ask for more.
I think we could quite without I think doing things that are like trail maintenance that we should be doing every year or mowing. I agree. We should just put that, we should leave that in the operating budget. But for things like the land management plans or that we're doing once every
5 years, maybe.
Hopefully actually once every time we acquire new land. We've never done, but best practices, the trustees, etc. Whenever they are you do a baseline and you do a plan, you figure out what your long-term strategic plan for a property is, and you go forward and execute it. And I think doing those plans for properties like Wildwoods, which we started with a forestry management plan and then everybody threw up over it, and so we've never done anything since then. So
well, I think for example, having this subgroup allows us, is great because it allows us to actually put some attention towards that so that we come up with a list of things to do. My question is really whether we want to break this out or actually just ask for more money so that we can handle things of that sort. We've level funded this for years, but at the same time we haven't fully used its amount ever. And so the existence of this group will allow us to potentially use that money on a ongoing basis.
I think what Anna is saying is she thinks that we're going to need more than level funding.
Yeah, the conservation fund.
Year, so we should be asking for 50,000 for the for the conservation fund so that we can build up some money to do these management plans.
And I would anticipate, and I'm just politically, I'm anticipating that if we use that money for other than acquisition, we might run into pushback. I would prefer seeing a separate dedicated fund for maintenance, or maybe even something that says maintenance is allowed to accumulate, as opposed to having to be turned back. Not that we've ever turned it back that I can recall. I don't want to muddy the waters with getting ongoing funds for acquisition. I just think politically that's an easy thing for us to do. Anyone else have any input there?
So I'll just say that the conservation fund is created to help us. Oh, there goes my clock.
I'm sorry, what?
Clock interruption.
Oh.
So the language that is always in the warrant simply says, and I don't remember, as long as I've been at town meeting, we've never had to stand up and defend it. But it says that the money in the conservation fund can be used for any purpose authorized by the statute that is referenced here. And so I think we've been asking for 25. So if the understanding is, at least 25 is always going to be set aside for acquisition issues.
Mm-hmm.
If we increase it, it gives us greater flexibility. And the feedback from other towns is this is a dedicated account. Unlike the operating account, if you don't spend it by June 30th, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But that this is actually a more transparent way than buried in our operating budget. We go right to town meeting, and I think we can make our case, and the working group, we will be doing this. I don't think it's going to be a hard sell. I think, open space is supported, and I think we're going to be able to, use the fund. And I'm wondering, Amy, do you recall when it dropped from 50 and why?
I think it was, at a certain point, I'm not sure we even kept asking for money. And then because it was building up, maybe it was 25, maybe it was 50. And then after we did Wild Woods, it sort of seemed like land was so expensive that we couldn't do anything. And then the Brody property came up, and it seemed like it kind of re-energized both ourselves and DLCT, because we all realized that there were pieces of land that were important that weren't beyond our means. And so we were able to use it as leverage to get DLCT off the blocks. Mm-hmm. and buy the Brody property. And then after that, and the Pegan Hill acquisition, DLCT realized that they could raise a lot more money than they thought they could. And so they started acquiring stuff, and we started, kicking in our little piece. Mm-hmm. as the the frosting on the cake and the good housekeeping seal of approval for their acquisitions. But we put in 25 or 50,000 in many of those cases, and they were raising hundreds of thousands to millions.
So on Strawberry Hill there, Strawberry Hill and Dedham, what was that? Was that did we do 75,000 for that, or was that 50 for the
Blake property?
Yeah, the Blake.
I don't remember. I think it was 50, and
Yeah,
that was
50.
a $2-something million acquisition.
And if I get Lori, do you have what's our budget in that fund currently? What do we have in there? you have any idea?
Probably not a lot.
Well, we haven't done anything for a couple of years, so I'm wondering, if we have 75 or, do you have any idea, Lori?
I don't, and I don't like to guess. I have to get that from town accountant usually.
So let's find out. So I don't want to belabor this, but I just I've actually done some town meeting, at the town meeting stood up to ask for this money. And it's always been, I was just following what we had done before, which was making it clear that it was there as an acquisition fund. So what I'm hearing the difference being is that, and I don't want to, that's the way it's been presented. I would like to see the writing in terms of what it says we can do based on what Janet has been calling out here. But I don't want people, my feeling is if we want more management money, we do more management things, and then we ask for more management money, and then we ask for that to be that we can roll it over for special projects, and we can come up with some examples of what a special project might entail that would cost us more than what our annual budget is. I think that is something. So is this the one that deals with this, or is this a?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
And was this a? So what's the
copy paste of chapter 30 or chapter 40, whatever we are, 40.
So I don't know, and I don't know. Is that what the acquisition fund comes under, or was it just being done within the town and not relating to this particular chapter and verse?
Yeah. So this statute, it establishes the Conservation Commission. It outlines its authority, its responsibility. It also allows the town to create the conservation fund and what its purposes are and what you can use it for. So it's all in one.
So I would not be surprised if the acquisition fund that we fund currently may have been set up separate from this.
Oh,
so
no,
I think.
No,
what's that?
The sorry. Language specifically cites this chapter 40, section 8C. That's what, when we appropriate money under the warrant article for the conservation fund, it references this statute.
Does it? Okay, because 8C is also generally the one that allows us to accept certain things. I just want, I think it'd be wise for us to find out what the town actually thinks it comes under, right? Just because it's not, I don't recall this being referred to. It's always been referred to as a acquisition fund per se. I just want to, I think it would be politically expedient for us to feel this out a little bit in terms of what other boards think this is, like selectmen and planning, but mostly selectmen, so that we just don't, we don't try to do something without buy-in on their end. Does that, I'm just, is that clear in terms of how I'm describing it there? We have people have no problem giving us money for this land acquisition, but if we said, oh, by the way, occasionally we wanted to use it for X, Y, and Z, but we didn't tell you that over the previous 20 years. And so, whereas it might be easier, possibly, and if we get no pushback, it's not an issue, but it might be easier to say we're trying to manage things appropriately, and it would be helpful if we could, if we don't use all the funds, to let it accumulate so that we can roll it over the next year. So just a thought relative to the politics of the town.
Yeah, I see what you mean. If I'm certainly we can ask if it is the conservation fund, and we've just sort of been not highlighting it because it typically has been used for acquisition. My only concern is if we find it is acquisition only, do we want to go about creating another fund / rewriting or doing whatever accounting that's needed, or will we want to have put it in our operating budget? Because if we do that, we'll have missed our operating budget to ask for increases for strategic land management for next year.
Well, what I'm seeing, well, for number one, we need to find the balance in this fund anyway. Okay. Number two, we if we're looking at, we have 30,000 that we can spend going forward. And as this is a group that's just getting started, the question is whether or not we could, between now and the, well, we have a little extra, we have a few months, frankly, to fine tune, ask whether or not asking for more money. I'll touch base with Lori on that. So whether we, but to do that, it would be great to have a 1-paragraph narrative that's stated, we've created this land management group. Some of the things that we're looking at are X, Y, and Z, which would be in excess of what we currently get for land management fees. And so therefore, based on that, we would like to increase it to X amount of dollars, and my guess would be another $10,000, would probably be helpful. I don't know if you've come up with any numbers or what other things you think would, you'd like to do in the next year and a half.
That's partly why we want to use the conservation fund, is to give us a little more time to plan, because otherwise it's due like next week. But yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly. We were thinking going from 25 back to 50 would be straightforward, because that'll, be plenty good and is consistent with what we've done historically. But obviously we need to be more specific before we actually, go to the warrant committee and be like, please approve.
Well, and I think part of it, we want to find out what the perception is of that fund. But the other thing is, off the top of your head, are there particular management things that you can think of that would be handled in the next year and a half that, would exceed the $30,000? Well, we're taking, go ahead.
Was someone gonna talk?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about, so I've been talking to folks at Mass Audubon, who are 2 plans that we have, one at Dedham, and the other one at Valley Farm. Their suggestion is those were kind of like the low-hanging fruit, and that you really need, in order to create a really good budget narrative, you need to have first a general land management strategic plan. Someone to come in, look at all your properties, do some initial site work, come up with specifications for what needs to be done, and then you start to prioritize your properties. We have a list, we probably have 20 properties. Some are really small that don't need any management, but in order to make a compelling argument for additional funds, we really need to do that strategic plan. And that's going to be probably at least 30 or so. We can use some of that, some of what's left over in FY24, although we're not sure exactly what is uncommitted. But I will say, I mean, again, I've looked at the warrant article. It doesn't specify acquisition. That may have been, and I've been in town for 28 years and go to town meeting every year. I don't, this usually just gets kind of flown by with all the other revolving fund accounts. But I think we could make a very compelling case as to why we want to increase the fund. And we'll need a little more time to get that into concrete form. But it's really the Conservation Commission. I know we'll have to get buy-in by selectmen and then the warrant committee. But I think this is really straightforward. We have not been managing our land in really in hardly any way. Even our 2 land management plans, we're not following the priorities that we had agreed to do in those plans. So
can you just bring me up to date? I'm sure, can you just give some examples of the things that I don't recall, I remember seeing the plans, the things that we're not doing on those, because we've been very passive. And what are some of the things for like Dedham Street?
So on Dedham Street, the suggestion was to try to do some invasive removal, not the cypress scourge, because that's out of control, but along the bank area, the street that goes through the 2 portions there. Sense was to evaluate, if you want to encourage more people to use it, look, maybe putting in a boardwalk there. It was also the recommendation that we have our land surveyed, because we have constant encroachment issues with that big white house out there. They're always dumping on our land. So it was things
So
like,
yeah, those are things, because what since we've been getting it with the land management fund, the $5,000 a year, the ability to we've not been using that clearly. You know, we did it 1 year, or maybe we covered it with 2 years worth of stuff with Audubon, and the ability to even make that accumulate would be helpful. So I think I don't say my concern, as I voiced before, is many people, I believe this has been, you know, submitted the $25,000 as an acquisition fund, and we can change that perception, but we want to find out what the perception is in the first place, and then have a plan there. I think we're looking at a chicken and egg situation, and so I think I don't see. We have a little bit of what I've heard with warrant and town management. If we can come up with something in the next month that is a little bit more directed here to, you know, in terms of laying out a few concise goals that we could easily present to people or town meeting to enhance our maintenance budget, I think I'd like to do that.
Oh yeah, we need to come up with a pitch for people.
Yeah, and then we need to use those management monies strictly for management, which will roll into the next thing that we're going to finish up with. So is there any additional stuff that you wanted to bring up relative to the land management work group?
Oh, go ahead.
Just to clarify, John, I'm not really following what you're saying, but I know there is a deadline of the 17th and we don't meet again before.
I understand that. We don't have, my feeling is we don't have enough defined presentation to turn to them and ask for more money relative to this. And it was one of the things that it was brought to my attention which is, you know, is actually helpful. I number one, as you pull that up, Anna, I have no interest in lowering. Oh, can you bring that back up, the numbers?
Yeah.
There is no reason for us to ask for less money on the trail maintenance budget account. Okay, I'm not so, because I think we want to maintain whatever we can get, you know, at this point. If I bring this up to the powers that be, the natural question is going to be, what have you been doing for maintenance with this money all along? And we've been using all the money, but we've not been using it for maintenance. So I think it will give us a more cogent directive if we have a plan that we want to use it for, because we don't have a history of actually doing the maintenance. And so what my conversations with town administrator is, if we can get that data together, we can probably come in with an amended request, even though we have things that are due, you know, imminently. So I think that's the way to do that. So right at the moment, we're, I think, Lori, have you sent that in yet? The budget?
No, I have not even input it yet because I wanted to wait until after this meeting, so I knew what was happening.
So
Monday, I have to pass it in Monday.
Right. So one of the things that town minister told me, he pointed out that in the warrant committee requests there for funding, they were asking us to fund for level services, which was a very interesting difference than level budget. So so that we can still, you know, that inflation may have, you know, affected things, that, you know, if we want to still provide the services that we're providing, it may, you know, require us to ask for more money as opposed to level budgeting. So that's, I thought that was an interesting thing. My concern is, just intellectually looking at this, is if we wanted to maintain our level services for trail maintenance, we don't have a history of those services. It's because of the way we've operated, and having a subgroup like this will help us focus so that we can try to keep our eye on that and be able to have projects to do. So I think I see this as a future operation here. So I think going for the 25 and 5 that we typically have is appropriate, because then we have the ability to show them what we can do this next year in terms of level services, and if we have the ability to do some additional maintenance and maintenance also, I think that is apparent to residents, or something that we can go to, and maybe something we focus on. So I think Dedham Street is there's a parking issue there to have people be able to use it, but also I think it is a little boggy out in the back. So the concept of a boardwalk, things of that sort, I think that is great. The invasives around the backside of that pond and over into the, close to the neighbor's land are phenomenal. And so those are certainly things that I think if we focused on those for next year, and that gives us the ability to work towards a list for other things, rather than trying to squeeze it all into a 4-day time frame to get this in for this year, is my sense, and I'm open to a cogent reason not to, but I just think because of the way the budget's hit, trying to come up with a bunch of new things in the next 3 days is difficult.
Yeah, and I think you're about to say the same thing I will, so you go ahead.
So I just wanted to clarify, John, so we're not proposing reducing anything. So what's up on the screen, we tried to capture, but obviously we didn't do it in as clear as we should. So we're in FY24 now. And
Yeah.
so what we identified, the 20, we've already spent a considerable amount of money on mowing at Springdale and Dedham and Valley Farm. So we just wanted to show what we think is left in the account and what we would use it for. And then going forward for the next year, we only get one bite at the apple for our next fiscal year, which begins in 6 months.
So basically we're almost in vehement agreement here. No, so next FY25, you're looking for 25 and 5, which is the way we have been doing it. And so so on FY24, so I think that's a big jump to decide that you want to go ahead and start using that because of something that you read versus what everyone thinks it's used for. So I want to clarify that before I start reaching in there. And I want to get buy-in from somebody to say that that's the way they viewed it as well. Or we, so that and then also that would be, we would spell that out more, because I just don't like the idea of things being left a little inchoate there, not really, spelled out.
So John, are you proposing that in next year's budget, we actually ask for a larger maintenance budget so that we can do because the mowing is going to go up in price, but we'll still do all the mowing, but we would have some monies in there as well to do a certain number of land management plans and bog bridges.
Absolutely. So I think
the numbers that we got this year, the 25, next year would be actually 35 or 40.
And because
and call that level service.
Absolutely. And I think part of it would be also the fact that both level service and deferred service, that we
and then
bring that.
If you get pushback, then you'll say, well, if you don't want me to do this, then how about that? And talk about the conservation fund.
Possibly. I think we can make a good case if we show, if we get some stuff done this year with the funding that we have, if we start to generate a history of doing these things, and then I think the ability to turn and say, but we have plans to do more, but we find that we're constrained by the potential of having to give money back at the end of the year. So we either get more money so that we can fulfill these, and if we don't, you get the money back, or we can accumulate this so that we can do larger projects. but I think we don't have the list of larger projects to be able to show them clearly what it is we'd like to do. And so, so yeah, I think that's the goal, is to take this year's budget, make some hay with it, both literally and figuratively, but and then work on that and say, possibly the next year, and say, okay, we bumped up into our limit here because we've kept this level funded for 10 or 12 years. And as we look out for the next couple of years, we think we would need 40,000 a year instead of 30,000. So that's, I think that makes it for an easy narrative there.
Yeah, just to clarify, the reason we're thinking both the operating and the conservation, and this may not be the thing that, you know, collectively we all want to do, but kind of the reason we bit that off is we're finding we have, with the working group, we have the ability to go out and do maintenance, you know, every weekend more or less, and think about the larger, bigger ticket items that are the step back. So we kind of want to fund both arms at the same time. The idea being we can work on log bridges in places where people are dumping logs, while also going like, what does Dover as a town need for land management, you know, blah, blah, blah. So that's the reasoning behind doing both, maintaining the trail maintenance, but then also not trying to let our, you know, planning projects eat into materials costs or whatever.
Well, and there, I think it may be that we, once we find out what the perception is of that conservation fund, which, as I said, we seem to have a difference in perception there, that either we change that perception, or we create an additional fund that deals with longer term maintenance issues. But I think in order for us to ask for that, we have to come up with some ideas for longer term maintenance issues. And so I think if, you know, basically if we can make people feel that we're spending this stuff on useful things. And so we need some examples of those useful things. And invasive management, there's no question, when you go behind Dedham Street, absolutely necessary. Whether you can get people excited about that, maybe there's something else we can come up with that gets people excited, you know, and get funding for that, you know, either separately or incorporated into that conservation fund as we move forward. So I had a question. Lori, do you know, on the WPA fund, can that be used for any sort of maintenance or projects? I know one of the funds we have specifically says things can't be used for that.
Very clear.
I believe
the yeah, it can only be used for administration and enforcement related to the Wetland Protection Fund and bylaw. It's very limited. Yeah.
Interesting. So, okay, well, we've been using that for some of your invoices, but what's helpful there is for
to administration and enforcement of.
Oh, no, exactly. I was just going to bring up the fact that some of our enforcement orders have gotten, you know, there's been a lot of time and effort put into it. So it's a clear, you know, it's a clear use to use that for the, you know, for those, you know, for your invoices there. So I think that's good. So my feeling is we're getting started. We have a very, you know, a deadline that's directly on top of us. I think the idea of level funding, but make sure that we actually use these funds this year for projects so that we can build up a history there. And that also gives us a better idea of moving forward of how to budget for certain things, look at some long-term projects, and then come up with a presentation of how to fund those. And then maybe on that clarification there of the 20,000 there, just note something on that of year-to-date balance or something like that stands out, so it doesn't get to me it looked like a subtraction from things. And now once you've explained it, I get it. But although that's going to drop already because we just encumbered $3,500. But yeah, just have a notation there on that. Is there anything else to bring up relative to the land management?
I just want to make sure. So for land management in terms of budgeting, we should at this point be focusing on explaining the projects. Is there papers you need from us in order to submit? I wasn't quite sure.
No, I think Lori's going to take care of that. I think we'll submit it as we normally do, and then if we come up with something in the next 30 days, then we might be able to try to squeeze it in and say, look, we didn't have a chance, but we'd like to work on this. And I've made it clear too, the difficulty we've had with land management or management things in general is because we have just been overwhelmed with the submissions and things that we've had to deal with for more than 2 years at this point. And so that I spun the land management group as something that would allow us to focus on this so that we can, properly move forward. So they're almost a little primed once we give them some additional info to look for some funding there. So thank you very much. And this is great because I think this is exactly what everybody has been, thinking of wanting to do. So go ahead, Lori.
So I'll be submitting the budget like I normally do on Monday, not asking for anything more, just.
Well, so one of the things we're about to deal with Janet's invoice. And the question there is whether we would ask for, if we put in any additional funds to cover us for overruns that we anticipate. So let's discuss.
I'll ask you again after that.
Right, exactly. Right, because I'm sure we're going to come up with a number and we'll be fine. So, okay. So I think the last thing we have is did everyone get a copy of Janet's most recent invoice? Actually, I'm trying to find mine. Oh, I have it up on the my computer. So it's basically it's over $13,000. There's no question that this has been a really busy time, and Janet has been producing very good, copious work, and very, very helpful. I think everyone will agree. So the question we have though is that after this invoice, we're 4 months into the fiscal year, and we have 1 month. We basically have 1 month of billing if this continues at this rate. We have after this invoice, Janet will have been paid $50,000 towards a $65,000 contract, and so if we keep that run rate, which Janet, I know, doesn't want to keep that run rate, and none of us really want to keep that run rate, but we've had there are things that have been out of our control. We're doing a better use of outside consultants, because then that doesn't come out of our budget. Since we've been dealing with the budget, and we're looking at being above board with the town, and to let them know. And some departments have an idea of just what it is, and they marvel at the amount of work we get accomplished. And some boards have no idea. They have 45-minute meetings, and life is wonderful. So I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention so that we figure out how we want to approach this. At this run rate, as I said, which I don't believe this would be a true run rate, but I hope not. This would be $150,000 consulting budget, okay, which doesn't exist anywhere in the state as far as I've been able to find out. And Janet, just as a quick aside on this, I know as you and I discuss things every month, we think it's going to get better. Looking out for the next couple months, do you see anything lightening up at all, or does it really look like it's just going to continue?
It's impossible to say, John. We're at the mercy of these developers and who come in. There's just, that's one of the factors. It's really not predictable. But generally over the winter, because we have our delineation policy, winter delineation policy, generally things do slow down. Yeah.
So that's the hope. Although I think historically what we've seen is even when they slow down, the monthly run rate is still greater than the $65,000 contract. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, it's been like that for several years. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring it to people's attention because we start to get into a range here, if this continues, of whether or not this is the proper model for us to deal with our consulting agency or an agent, or however we deal with it. Since Janet started, we have basically been increasing or her consulting invoices, or what we've paid her, have increased approximately 50% per year. And part of that is we've looked at things that we've had to handle historically that could be better handled if we had certain controls in place, which then takes up some of Janet's time. So for example, the pre-construction checklist adds additional time to Janet, but avoids us having to chase after people who didn't do things correctly. The monthly progress reports allow us to maintain things so that people will turn around and get their COCs faster, and we don't end up with COCs, 10 years down the road. There are many, many benefits that have accumulated, even though we've increased some of the reporting requirements, to an extent. Enforcement orders don't show up in regular data. For example, as much as we feel like we're overwhelmed, if we go to DEP and pull up the number of notices of intent, we are remarkably consistent on a year-to-year basis. The amount of work we've been doing over the last 2 years, to somebody looking just at our filing numbers, we shouldn't, according to them, we wouldn't be overwhelmed. But what we're dealing with is much more complex filings. We're dealing with things where the land is more marginal. We have more 40Bs coming in. The enforcement orders have been a little nutty. So all of this goes into things. And so right now, last year, and this also goes to our trail maintenance. So the only way that we've been able to cover Janet's overages in this case, and they're documented overages, they're not just willy-nilly, things, has been to take money from the maintenance budget. We found that we had a WPA balance at one point of around $75,000. We were surprised because, frankly, accounting had never included that in their budgets. We don't always get 100% of the accounts sent to us when we ask for accounting for that. So that gave us some breathing room. We could reach into that, and legitimately, as we just discussed, those funds can be accessed for dealing with enforcement orders and other administrative costs. But we're eating into that, and I think I'm going to ballpark it because sometimes it's hard to get the numbers direct from accounting, but we may have a balance of around $35,000 in that for this year. We don't replenish it that quickly. It's based on 50% of the filing fees that we send to the state. So that gets replenished on the order of maybe, I'll have to double check, but last year I did a number and it looked around $12,000 a year. So you can see by just doing the math, we run out of money shortly from there. So last year, let's see, in fiscal year 21, the original consulting budget that we had for Janet was $30,000. In 21, we submitted and it was approved. We went up to $45,000. That was based on, we got that approved, but by the end of the fiscal year, we had spent $60,000. So we reached into our trail maintenance fund to cover that $15,000 shortfall. In fiscal year 22, it had a $45,000 budget. We spent $91,000. Now, part of that, I believe at that time, that's when Haven Terrace had come up and things of that nature. We got town management and the warrant committee to approve a transfer so that we could cover those bills. Okay. Then for year to date, for last year, and let me find where that number is. Last year, we then went to contract. We did the right thing. We had a $65,000 contract. And that contract is supposed to be relatively ironclad, but with extenuating circumstances as an out there. And last year, we spent almost $99,000. So even though we had a $65,000 contract, we ended up spending $99,000. Okay. And this year, we're certainly going to break 100. And I'm trying to think of where we got our money last year. Do you recall, Lori or Janet, where we went into WPA funds, went into land management funds? Did we get any additional money from Warren Committee or anything to cover last year? No recollection.
Involved in that, that would have been your call, I guess.
Okay, so we managed it, and I believe a lot of it is what brought down our WPA thing. So now we have a budget request that we're going to the town for, and it makes sense based on the history we have to request more money for the consulting agent. So Janet had Janet and I have spoken about this, and Janet recommended an increase of 22,500, which would bring it up to 87,500. And I think that might be reasonable on an average year, although if we look at our averages, they've been increasing year to year. So but it's also a matter of what might be acceptable to people. I think if I'm concerned if we bring up a number that's at $125,000 or something like that to be closer to reality, that is going to be shocking to town meeting folks and to warrant committee. But we can justify it. We can show them our minutes. We can show them everything we've been working on. But let me just.
At what point do we move to a staff model instead of a consultant?
Well, that's precisely we're really starting to hit that tipping point,
which I'm not sure Janet wants. So maybe we have to figure out when they push us to a staff model, in which case we're in trouble.
We are, because there's not the personnel who are out there to find for staffs. Many towns will put things up and not get responses or get people who are not qualified. So this is it's not there's no slam dunk where you get to $100,000 and you say, oh, we move over to a staff model. But if things don't moderate, we are really looking at around, I would say, at minimum $125,000, $130,000 for this fiscal year for consulting services. And I want to try to I want town management to understand that so that it's not a surprise to them. But what I've also talked to town management is prior to Chris Dwelly leaving, they had a consultant come in and look at a number of different departments and review their how they handle things, their efficiency, how it compared to other towns, and came up with some recommendations. And it appears that they took most of them. So they added staffing at Board of Health. They added staffing through Planning Board. They added staffing to the Highway Department, all of which was pointed out by Charlie Long at the last town meeting. And as in an eloquent way that he does. But people seem to agree that that's what happens when you move into the 21st century. So my experience with other towns that I've developed in is that decent towns that have similar conservation DEP number, numbers that are similar to ours, they're staffed at around $100,000. That doesn't include benefits and things of that sort, but that's the salary that they offer. And the benefit to that in that model is that's also for a 35 or a 37-hour week. So that's the part of the rationale that would be used if we were to approach town management, if we wanted to move to that sort of situation. Go ahead.
I'm not advocating we move to it. I'm cautious about asking too much for a consulting budget and being forced to move to it and therefore losing Janet because she doesn't want to be a staff.
Yeah. Well,
person.
I think,
Because, you know, if you say it's 100,000 in salary for that person,
there's another
that person
25.
is costing the town 150,000 or more because of benefits and pension. So
Absolutely, but the idea that what we're going to bump into is the idea of paying somebody as a consultant $150,000 is going to be phenomenal pushback. So
I'm not advocating we go to 150.
that's the
but
rate we're going at now. Yeah, but that's
Well, I think we need 2 Janets if we're going to 150 because I don't think Janet's going to put up with that either. I mean, just
well, not only that is frankly it's not just Janet, Lori's workload. Lori has no breathing space.
No.
And so one of the things that I mentioned to the town administrator was the idea of getting a part-time administrative aide in for Lori, because there is no, Lori eats at her desk and there's and the town enforces that. So we have to be forward looking in terms of what the true model needs to be. And that's where I think outside review is there. Jan and I have discussed, town council has pointed out at times, Janet gives very, very complete reports. The question is, do they need to be as complete? Is there a way that Janet can do something for minor projects that may not require as much time? The question is, and Jan and I will go ahead and review those, but part of that is there may not be that much of a cost savings to that. It could just be
there
the
aren't
overall
very many
workload.
minor projects.
Well, actually, if you read Janet's invoice, yeah, we've had a number of things that are $500 here and there, but they add up to be what in essence would be your contractual run rate. And then we have the big projects. And maybe it's a matter of getting separate funding for large projects.
Maybe we need 2 consultants.
And there is not, I don't know of a single town that I've looked at probably 40 at this point that has multiple consultants. So it's interesting. I've talked to Janet did a survey of certain towns, such as Weston, Lincoln, Sudbury, places like that, which have pretty well funded conservation agencies. And then there's a series of our surrounding towns that are really having a hard time trying to handle things. Medfield doesn't even have a administrative person in their office currently. Sherburne and Medfield have been talking about sharing resources. Sherburne uses Joyce to handle their consulting. Medfield has a consulting agent. No, Joyce is $40 an hour. She's being very, very gentle with them. I think that's also part of the reason she may be exhausted. But and in Medfield, they're paying, I think, around $170 an hour, but he seems to be able to do what they need at around 6 or 7 hours a week. So there's just this range that there's no simple answer that may be directly applicable for us. And so my point is that we need to try to proactively get ahead of this. And obviously, I mean, I think Amy brings a good point. I mean, Janet, I'm assuming that if you end up working to the point where you're up at over $125,000 a year, that's not what you originally signed up for. That wasn't your rosy idea of consulting part-time for Dover. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, we really don't want to be working full-time, but the fact that there is some flexibility. But I've also talked with John about some ideas to try to make things more efficient. And I think also a big piece of that is using peer review more often. because we are gonna have a number of 40Bs, Trout Brook, Chickering Drive. Those are all gonna be very challenging. Those are 4 lots that are about as challenging as you get. So I think there are some cost savings going forward, which, and I think asking for something under 90 is reasonable. And I'm certainly going to work to keep my hours down. I do quite a bit of pro bono work for the town that I think brings real value. And I realize, you know, I mean, it's at least $1,000 a month that I'm doing pro bono. So.
Do you know, Jen, I'm just curious, as I was going over things, so as the town is trying to deal with all these mandates that they're dealing with, they're turning, it just seems like, you know, they are turning to you for input. You know, like the housing development, you know, group that's just being started and so forth. Is that coming from, is that being pro bono? Is that coming from us? Is that how is that going to be handled?
Well, so it hasn't been, you know, it's been 2 hours, 3 hours.
Right, right.
But I think that they wanted professional staff in on these discussions, which is really about the future of the town and trying to have some control over housing that is being forced on us. So, and I was asked specifically by Robin Hunter from the Board of Selectmen. I think it's in the commission's best interest to cooperate. So,
well, something that came to mind was that depending on, and we, you know, Janet and I are attempting to meet every month to go over some of these issues, and the meetings are really fruitful. So, but one of the things would be, if the town is asking you for a number of these things, there's, you know, there's a limit to pro bono work, and yet at the same time we're running over budget on our end. Maybe there's an additional contract that, you know, for floating consulting or something of that sort. I don't think that would cover much, but, you know, in terms of when you break it down, but you know, I think we just need to put our hats on and try to figure out you know, some other options there. And so one of them is, I think we do owe it to town, you know, to residents, to ourselves and so forth, to see if there are an outside consultant is aware of the way other towns may be running into similar functions and what the options are. So given that they did this with other departments, I think moving forward on that would give us some outside review of that. I think the outside consultant aspect, and this is something which many of you may not be aware of, but a number of years ago when Janet first started doing this, we had the ability to bill applicants for Janet's time, and so that came, you know, kind of kept it off budget, and we could, although we still had a budget, but that money went back into the general fund, but we could point to it and say, we're not pulling this out, you know, we're putting something back in. Town council informed us a few years back that in essence we're providing a service to residents, and in so doing we don't really have the ability to bill on that level. However, we can bill using outside consultants for larger projects, and so that's why that's one of the reasons that we've turned over to that, and so far we've just, as we started to, that does take some pressure off. So I just wanted to, you know, let everyone know that these are the numbers that we're dealing with, and that Janet is looking to review what she can do to lower the you know, the hours. And you know, the idea of even mentioning efficiency is not to cast aspersions. It's just always, you know, you get your head into something and you want to do things, you know, correctly and do them well, which Janet has been doing, but is there a place where you stop, or is there a place where not that much information is necessary? And so that's one of the things that she'll be reviewing. On our end, the question is, should we, you know, as part of our proposal that Lori's going to be putting in, at the very least, I agree with Janet's number at 87.5. Should we bump it to 90, or should we keep it under 90, or, you know, does any input on that?
I mean, I think 90 is probably a more realistic number, right?
Yeah, I think Janet's concern, let me know if I don't express this problem, that under 90 may be more palatable for the, for a jump. Even though it's not significantly, different.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to go 85? I mean,
no, I'm thinking 88.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we do that, is that
I mean, I
Janet?
guess the thing that happens, so we bump it up but we end up spending, 110. Because admittedly, these additional 40Bs, and if Corrigan manages to skinny in Tisdale or however that plays out, there's more consultancy there. And that, the Trout Brook and Chickering there is going to be interesting because that's all at flood height, right? I mean, that's all at 108.
Yeah, one of the questions that I've asked, and Janet and Laurie have been looking, but we haven't come up with anything, is that we know that FEMA is changing those maps. And if they go to one
Carol Lisbon told us at Open Space last month that they've delayed the release until January.
It might even be later than that. And part of what we're trying to figure out is if we can get a working copy of any of these things to any sort of connection, because obviously if they go to 109, that makes it much harder for several of those lots to be viable.
She or Justine also mentioned this was at the October meeting, that there was some other previous attempt to do disconnected lots and it was denied.
So this one actually went through.
So there is precedent apparently.
There is, but they got mass housing approval for the disconnected lots before they came to us.
I know, but there's, I think that the town may be litigating it because of this precedent, but I don't.
So we'll see. Yeah.
I don't know anything, but we may
so there will.
anything.
And interesting, they have not filed with us yet, so we're not really on the board for it at this point in time, but I think everyone has expressed the concern about the floodplain issue there. So we want to see whatever information we get. So, and residents have neighbors down there have also mentioned, they all have water in their basement, and the idea that they can't imagine how somebody could be allowed to build, with knowing that they'll have water in their basement. That becomes, a Tetra Tech thing. So we're back at outside consultants, and that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to work. So, but I think the other thing we're looking at is, as I review things like on Janet's most recent invoice, which I think, let me just see if I can pull it up here. Is that, and Janet and I will go through these invoices, but I think it's surprising to me that the biggies sometimes, they don't, the thought I had was that the big developments would be comprising 50% of our invoice. And I didn't get that sense. I haven't done the math yet, Janet, but it seemed like it certainly accounted for 30%. At minimum, but that still brought us over what the typical run rate at 65,000 a year, which would be around.
But we also have all these enforcement orders that and we have all these ridiculous discussions like we had tonight with.
Well, and that, which is in Janet and I've discussed this as well. So one of the issues we're running into is.
But I mean, it's 11 o'clock, we need to.
Yeah, but let me just, one of the things, and tonight was an example, although this was more of a pushback as opposed to incompetency, but we've had developers who have incompetent representation, where they, they could have, if they had the appropriate representation, it would have been a much faster situation. And those are things. And those are things that we will look at immediately moving over. If they don't provide us with the information, the proper information, we'll move that over to an outside consultant, because it's not for us to have to babysit these folks. They should know how to do this. and all of these people have been in the business for decades. So I see this as a multi-pronged approach. So because of the hour we're at, but I really want everyone to be aware of where we are budget wise. So I would like to approve Janet's invoice, number one, and then also approve the request. And we may, within this window that we may have, I'll be talking to the warrant committee as well. We may be able to adjust that, the larger number for the next fiscal year. But basically, I wanted us to address it as a commission, so that we know, so everyone it's upfront and we know what it is we're dealing with, and that way also we can have multiple heads coming up with possible solutions. So I appreciate that. So I'll entertain a motion to pay Janet's invoice for, and I don't have that. Oh, excuse me, I do have that in front of me. Excuse me, for $13,366.25. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Amy?
Aye.
Amara? Anna?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Also, to propose a FY25 consulting agent budget of $88,000. Can somebody either move for that, please? Or if there's any further discussion?
So moved.
So moved. Okay.
So moved, yeah.
Okay, and do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor? Amy?
Aye.
Amara? I'm looking at me going, John. John, aye. It says my name right there. Anna?
Aye.
And Jim?
Aye.
Okay, great. Then are there any last words from me, Lori?
I just want to confirm that was 88 even, right?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I wanted.
And you and I can discuss if there's any wording that goes along with that, but clearly we can put this together something very quickly relative to the 40Bs and the special projects and enforcement orders and the like, so that we can make that clear as to where why. And any other comments? Oh, Anna.
Yeah, super fast. I've been going back and forth finally with Mona and Mike about getting the properties that the selectmen own to us. They went to town council. Town council said it had to have come through a town meeting.
Yep.
Does anyone remember when that happened? Or if there was a reason why it didn't?
What?
Oh, in terms of whether it went to town meeting for approval?
Yeah.
I don't think it did. Did it?
No, so the properties, the properties on the lists that I had, a lot of them are tax taken. There was no town meeting vote to take a tax taken lot, and town council. We were the town council that was advising the selectmen back 20 years ago when we started this process, did not feel that it was they could just be given to the Conservation Commission. But and the things like Valley Farm, they preceded the formation of the Conservation Commission, and it's really how you read the deed as to whether or not it should be conservation or one, some of them are water and conservation. So so
it seems to me that for like we discussed relative to the management plan, maybe rather than doing a grab for all of them, we'd take a look at ones that may allow us to create pathways to adjacent conservation properties. So that
we already manage Valley Farm. We're paying to mow the the
Mhm.
50 plus.
Oh, no,
acres, then we don't
that I think
own
is a
it.
slam. No, I think that's a slam dunk. I think that's,
We were only
that's
trying
clear.
for those, and then, you know, the Grand Hill ones that connect
Mhm.
properties that we already own to
Mhm.
DLCT properties. I mean, that is
Mhm.
what we were trying for,
Oh,
John.
okay,
I wasn't going for,
for every
all,
tax taking that would,
for
that we
every,
had.
you know, then there's some over on Dedham Street that are all wet, that are connected to the bean lot and bring us down to pretty close to Dedham Street. So it creates a wildlife corridor.
Mhm.
You know, so
Mhm.
it's not, and I had maps with
Yeah,
the
I see the
commission
maps. I
that
was,
show the contiguousness of
Mm.
these properties to things that we already own.
So what I'm hearing is it didn't go get in front of the town, because town council said they could just give it to us. And then Anna, your most recent conversation with town council is
yeah,
that it has to be approved. So maybe we run it by town
I'll
council
go back
again.
to Mike and say, we started this 20 years ago and town council said it didn't have to go in front of town meeting. So someone please explain.
Well,
and I
and
will
Mike
be
may
back
not.
with an
Well,
update.
It may also be that town council doesn't understand where those properties came from.
Right.
They may
Yeah.
think that they were acquired by the town.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's possible. I don't want to
For
keep
money.
everyone. I will go back and explain and,
Okay.
ask for more time once I've got more to say.
Yeah, I think, I mean, they're not going anywhere. Although, for example, historically, Lot 3 Claybrook was a tax taking at one point. And we missed out on that, but no, these ones aren't going anywhere. But I think that ties into our budget request, I think, to say that we're managing town properties that we actually don't even own. So we can always use that. So any other comments for the evening? Well, thank you very much for putting up with everything and for helping, and hearing no objection. Tonight's meeting is adjourned. Okay, good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.